Welcome back to day 2 at GreenBiz 24. We are in the center of the madness, the center of the energy. It's so fun here today. Again, I'm Neetha Rajendran, your co-host for Livestream Hub, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host,
Sarah Golden. I'm VP of Energy at GreenBiz, and yeah, I'm sure you can hear all the people all around us just getting ready for the second and final day of keynotes here at GreenBiz. Neetha, what keynotes are you looking forward to today?
Sarah. So I'm a huge Wawa Gatheru fangirl. I've been following Black Girl Environmentalist for years now, since I started my sustainability journey. For those of you who aren't familiar with her, she is an absolute powerhouse social media presence, and just advocate for diversity and intersectionality and sustainability. So she will be moderating a conversation with Derek Johnson, CEO of the NAACP, here on the just transition, what it means to have that in sustainability. So I'm really excited about that conversation. What about you?
Yeah, we'll also have CD Glenn on the main stage today from PepsiCo, who will also be talking about a just transition, who will be joining us after the keynotes for an exclusive interview as well. I'm also looking forward to a session that's going to be, I think, closer to the beginning of the keynotes, about pushing back against the anti-ESG narrative, which feels like it's such an important and big thing at this moment. So I'm excited to see how it's handled on the stage.
Absolutely. And if you remember Stuart Goldsmith, for those of you who were tuned in yesterday to the Livestream Hub, he's our climate comedian on site here at GreenBiz 24. He's going to be doing a stand-up performance later here in Phoenix. But also on the keynote stage, he is going to be hosting a talk about laughing about climate change, laughing about sustainability, co-hosted by our very own Katie Ryan at GreenBiz. So I think that's going to be quite hilarious and a really interesting take on what's going on here.
Yeah. And Stuart is really staying busy at GreenBiz this year, because he is also doing a session later in the day for the people that are here at the event, which is slide deck karaoke, where people are going to get a sustainability slide deck, and they just need to, they've never seen it before, and they just got to make it up as they go. And we'll be part of a conversation about the cliches we talk about in sustainability, and really what it means to be saying meaningful things when we're talking about this, and how to improve our communication.
It's basically like improv theater, so I'm really excited for that. And I mean, we have so many cool things going on. We're continuing a day full of breakouts. We have an after party here on site. I'm just looking around and I'm seeing all of the people just talking and chatting amongst themselves, and it feels like we really are at the center of gravity for all things corporate sustainability.
Yeah, it really does. The energy here has been amazing.
It has.
And yeah, I'm also loving the Jazz Mafia on the main stage, and so let's get over to the keynotes.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the stage, Senior Vice President, Sustainability, Dylan Siegler.
Good morning, GreenBiz 24. How's everybody feeling? Okay. I know that the Chardonnay at the opening reception hits a little different after a keynote like we had yesterday, but how's everybody feeling? Thank you. Thank you. If we didn't get a chance to meet yesterday, I'm Dylan Siegler, and I lead this event and corporate sustainability at GreenBiz Group. So today, we're going to do something a little bit different on the stage. Yesterday, we delved into influence and how you can develop it to be a part of massive change. Today, we're going to meet some speakers who are leveraging influence and combining it with their unique genius to solve some really wicked problems. If you were here yesterday, you know it got a little heavy. I can't promise it won't get heavy today, maybe in a different way, but I know you can handle it. To dive right into the hard stuff, everyone in this room knows about the ESG backlash that's been causing policy ripples and a wave of green hushing. Politicians and pundits on the right, the way they talk about ESG is often more aligned with cultural or social narratives than it is climate or finance. We, as sustainability professionals, know that shareholder proposals that have come through in the last 18 months in many of our companies have focused on trying to push back against companies for their diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice initiatives. Our first speaker today, Jorge Fontanes, is the CEO of B Lab, US and Canada. And he has maybe a radical proposal for how we should be pushing back against these narratives. Please welcome to the stage Jorge Fontanes.
Hello. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you, Dylan. I want to start with a short story. 3 years ago, when I joined B Lab, we were still in the pandemic, and our community in New York City was hard hit, like so many communities around the world. And amidst the chaos and uncertainty, an accidental fire also burned down my beloved church, Middle Collegiate Church, a community with a more than 400-year history in the East Village of Manhattan. I was married in that church to my husband, and more importantly, that church served so many community members in need. Finding ourselves displaced and seeking a home, I was with our pastor, Dr. Reverend Jackie Lewis, and many of our congregants that day, standing in front of the church, holding love and fear simultaneously for what would happen and how would we rebuild amidst the growing uncertainty. Jackie, Reverend Lewis, led us with a fierce kind of love, a courage to help us get through this tragedy. The title of her new book is called Fierce Love, and it's inspired by a philosophy of Ubuntu. The wisdom of knowing that I exist, I am, because you are. Ubuntu is a fierce love of humanity and a philosophy that recognizes our interconnectedness to get through tragedy and loss. Because in that moment, Reverend Lewis and so many of us needed the support of others to get through. Dylan said to me earlier, I might be taking you all to church, so I hope you're ready. This experience has me thinking a lot about what the sustainability movement must need right now. And I'm in particular talking to you sustainability leaders and those of you that hold the title of CEO as I do. Having spent 2 decades in the sustainability movement, I'm here to share a loving critique. We may have unintentionally built a movement more on fear than on love. We may not like or love everyone, but when we learn to love the particular nature of humanity, we begin to understand how interconnected we are. When we structure business with love, when we use environmental, social, and governance principles and frameworks that inherently recognize the interconnectedness of nature and people, and when we move as a true collective with the knowledge that I am because you are, I believe we will overcome. We are living through a moment of incredible division. Nationwide, over the last year, we have seen an incredible increase of fear and vitriol in the courts and in the public square against affirmative action, against diversity, equity, and inclusion, against our beloved environmental and social practices, because there's a fear that as more people benefit, others will lose. Last year, in 37 states, more than 197 pieces of fear-motivated anti-ESG legislation was introduced in state legislatures. Let's be clear, this effort is intentional, backed and funded by powerful interests. The anti-ESG campaign is a coordinated effort to dismantle so much of what has been created over the last 60 years since the civil rights movement and the environmental justice movement collided in response to discriminatory corporate practices. These attacks are not new, and I believe they are working because we have fallen out of love. We've become more disconnected from the problems that directly affect communities, especially the 100 people living under the poverty line in the United States. I believe we've been sold a lie rooted in fear by people who want to maintain power. Fear may be winning, and we need more love right now. So if I think we need more love to sustain our movement, what do we need to become in order to choose love over fear? We need to be comfortable challenging the status quo. We need to believe that short-term impact on the bottom line is a small price to pay for long-lasting impact. We must be able to bravely dismantle policies, programs, and practices that reinforce inequality. We must not be terrified of each other. We must not let the images of floods and fires and scarcity and political turmoil overwhelm us. And while fear may be a natural response, a human response, the question I am posing to you all today is, where is the love? Bell Hooks, author and activist, says that when we choose love, we choose to move against fear, against alienation and separation. The choice to love is a choice to connect, to find ourselves in each other. And so I want to have us go back in time a bit to 2022, when the Supreme Court came out with the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. In that moment, we saw fear, yes, but we also saw an outpouring of emotions and love for the freedom of bodily autonomy and privacy. And I want to give a shout out to Susan McPherson and the Don't Ban Equality platform that we so need right now, because that fight is still not done. Let's fast forward then to the affirmative action ruling in 2023, when SCOTUS decided to overturn affirmative action in education. This has effect in business. And I ask, where was the outrage, protest, concern? Where was the love for people like me whose opportunities and livelihoods are now threatened by this? Our workplace is a refuge for workers. Where was the love for Black and brown workers? What will this mean for LGBTQIA workers? What will this mean for people with disabilities who will also look to gain access and live better lives by fully participating in our economy? This is what is at stake. While imperfect, affirmative action put cracks in a system of walls, it lowered barriers of equity, and it made possible for so many of us to be leaders in a movement that was not always inclusive and is still struggling to be. The dominant narrative suggests to me that companies come first, planet second, and people come last. We need a movement to change our mental models and our priorities. And that movement is felt in the B Corp community. 8,000 of them worldwide are living examples of a love proposition. 25% of all B Corps are fully owned by their employees. 69% of B Corps offer bonuses or profit sharing to non-executive workers. B Corps are 1.5 times more likely to certify companies under fair trade practices, doing better for their suppliers. We're also 5 times more likely to have supplier diversity programs in place for underrepresented populations, and we have protected over 1 million hectares of land about the size of Jamaica and diverted over 8 million tons of waste from landfills or incineration. We're driving climate action with the principles of inclusion and belonging, as well as reconciliation, community restoration, and other actions rooted in love. They're fundamental principles of our movement. And at B-Lab, we've also come to recognize that we must learn from how indigenous wisdom and the Black experience and the experiences of frontline communities must be respected and listened to if we're to get this right. Collective action is our call, and it's the key to our success. Being a B Corp today is not just a banner of pride and about continuous improvement and performance and our beloved stakeholder governance policies. It's about acting beyond your 4 walls so that your actions have actual systemic impact on the broader system. It's about connection, and it's also about finding ourselves in each other. So here's an invitation. This year, B-Lab is mobilizing our community over 2,500 companies in the United States and Canada to show that love and business are not contradictory. Labor, business, state and city officers, climate and social advocates are coming together and building powerful coalitions. We must not be afraid. We're building a collective offense in support of purpose-driven business, and our narrative must stretch beyond the B Corp community to be effective. And so my invitation to you is to download our Pro ESG messaging guide at wearebcorps.com/messaging. In it, we share messages that are working and appealing to both sides of the aisle. These are messages that are hopeful, and they're ones based in love, not fear. And they're demonstrating that business can create high-quality jobs, that we can operate with transparency, that we can lean into and create cleaner and more sustainable communities while turning a profit. Poll after poll, the public wants corporate responsibility and nothing less. I believe that together we are a force to reckon with when we lead with courage, even if we believe our impact may not be seen for generations to come. What we do today matters for tomorrow. And at the end of the day, may love win. Thank you.
Thank you to Jorge Fontanes. Let's have a round of applause. In 2020, we saw corporations make commitments to racial justice, to closing the racial wealth gap, to climate justice. And to be frank, some corporations have come through and are doing good, if quiet work, toward what we call a just transition. But more commonly, we're seeing corporate commitment to justice go unrealized. And so what I'm hoping to do today in our next conversation is put some contours around what, in 2024, we can do to actually make progress toward this just transition, and to have a more honest conversation within sustainability about race. Our next conversation brings together writer, activist, and scholar Wawa Gatheru with Derek Johnson. He's the head of the foundational Black advocacy group, the NAACP. Please welcome them to the stage. Hello, welcome. hello, Derek, Wawa. I am so happy to be having this conversation with you. Welcome to GreenBiz. I want to start out by saying we just heard Jorge give us this real radical proposal that we should be leaning into love. And it reminds me of the idea that we should consider love to be actually an action and not a feeling. Before we get into this conversation that I think is going to be really fascinating, I want to make sure I give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves beyond what I was able to say in my short intro. So Wawa, let's start with you. We know that you're a writer, an activist, that you're an author and a scholar, you're a Rhodes Scholar, and that you're the founder of Black Girl Environmentalist. Tell us what that organization does.
Yeah, well, hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Phoenix is such a beautiful city, and I'm really excited to explore. Like I was introduced, my name is Wawa Gatheru. I am a climate activist, a Gen Z climate activist, and I really see my work as being a part of understanding that the climate crisis is, while an ecological crisis, it's also a narrative and leadership crisis. So with Black Girl Environmentalist, we are a national nonprofit that is working to empower the next generation of Black women and Black gender expansive folks. And we are specifically doing that through addressing the very real pathway and retention issue that exists in the climate sector for that demographic. We know that people of color make up nearly 40% of the US population, but we don't exceed a 12 to 16% green ceiling in the climate sector. We also know that Black women have amongst the lowest retention rate. So a lot of the work that we're doing is to address those paradigms by creating and supporting existing pathways while making sure that when we are entering the space, we are staying.
Great. Derek, we've heard that you lead the NAACP. Obviously, this is a foundational organization, and that I know that you kind of came up through the ranks and are a veteran activist with the organization. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. Good morning. I'm glad to be young with Wawa and a Rhodes Scholar that I'll never be, so congratulations. Derek Johnson, I am the 19th president of the NAACP, the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization, founded 115 years ago yesterday. I became active with the association when I was an undergrad in 1990. I believe I've served in probably every capacity on the volunteer side up until taking this position in 2017. And I took the position in large part because of the chairman of the board at that time, I was serving as vice chair, said that we need you to go and be interim to figure out how do we turn this legacy organization around to bring it into the current reality. And after 3 months of serving as interim, I came back with a robust plan. They said, this is great, please leave the room. And they called me back in and they had voted for me to be the permanent in this position, which is really important for me personally, but also in the juncture of the NAACP, because like with most legacy organizations, corporations, institutions, we oftentimes continue to do what we've always done because of historical reasons. But in this current environment, I will not be able to effectively advocate for voting rights or you name the rights if we don't have a planet. And so we began to work a more robust approach around sustainability and climate justice, because at the end of the day, if we don't change the model by which we operate, not only as an organization, a nation, or globally, we're going to lose some of the most precious resources, and that's called air and water and the ability to exist on this planet. And so the intersection of equity and opportunity and climate are very important. You really cannot do one effectively without the other. And so that's why I'm glad to be a part of this conversation this morning.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Derek. And I'm going to stay with you. We talk a lot in sustainability about the just transition, and it can feel a bit vague. There are a lot of possible definitions to this, and you can kind of define it however you want. So I'm curious, first of all, how you think about the just transition, if you think about it that way at all. How do you define it? And what do you think is going right in our approach to getting there?
I'll make this joke, the phrases and buzzwords in this current conversation, just transition, ESG, DEI. I mean, I will say, did McKinsey create this in one of the office meetings and then everybody use it? It's really simple. The way we do business, there has to be some disruptors. When the disruptors happen, there's going to be a new class of opportunities to generate revenue. And if in this country, if you're publicly traded, increase value for shareholders. But in doing that, there are communities and individuals who also should be included in that process. We have underdeveloped some of the most talented individuals in this country because of the zip code they live in. The lack of focusing on ensuring quality education for all children. The fact that we will be so bold as a nation to think we can outsource our future through privatizing tax dollars to train our young people. None of the nations that are emerging are privatizing their public education. They're doubling down. Finland completely renovated how they deliver quality education for all children, elevating the classification of a teacher to be about as equal as a doctor because they recognize the future of work, not the past of discriminatory social constructs. And so in a just transition is recognizing that we need to do something different to generate the things to keep the lights on and clean water. And in doing that, it's a whole set of jobs, the future of work that we need to train a workforce to participate in, so that when we transition, it's a holistic transition, that we are preparing a workforce for the future while at the exact same time ensuring a quality water, air existence for the generations that come behind us. So that's what it means to me.
I'm speechless. Wawa, you heard Derek mention in that extremely well-spoken definition of the just transition about giving opportunities to those in the workforce in particular. Can you talk a little bit about what you do and what the needs are for Black women and girls in the US and beyond?
Yeah, so I actually want to take a step back and really ground the just transition framework, where it comes from. So to me, a just transition is a visions-led, place-based set of strategies that are working to move us from an extractive economy into a regenerative one. It's a framework that comes from labor unions and grassroots environmental justice organizations that have been localized within poor communities of color. And those communities have always known that first and foremost, the just transition has to protect workers' rights. First and foremost, we have to engage in equitable wealth distribution, and we have to provide good-paying jobs. So when we think about what that looks like for Black women and Black gender-expansive folks and early career folks of color, folks need to be able to be seen as demographics that can hopefully allow us to solve the climate crisis. For Black girl environmentalists, environmental justice is really core and key to a just transition, because environmental justice calls for the meaningful participation of all people, regardless of race, class, gender, whatever it might be, in regards to environmental decision making. And in order for that to happen, in order for the green economy space to allow for a just transition to happen in that way, we have to create and invest in workforce pathways that allow for emerging climate leaders of color to come up. So BGE, we're doing a lot of that work. We are creating our own pathway programs. We recently launched the Hazel M. Johnson Fellowship Program named after the mother of environmental justice, Chicago-based environmental justice activist Hazelden Johnson. And with that program, we have partnered with different green organizations across disciplines, from fashion to climate tech, to finance, to policy, to really provide opportunities for rising juniors, rising seniors, and recent graduates that identify as Black women and Black gender expansive folks to participate in summer-long internship programs while making sure that they're being paid fairly, a minimum of $18 an hour, as well as receiving a $5,000 living and wellness stipend. Because even though there's a lot of conversation around pushing back against unpaid internships, there isn't a ton of conversation around how the high cost of living also plays a role in people being able to access these opportunities. So my take is, if we can do it as a very small Black youth-led environmental justice organizations, then everybody in this room can do it as well.
On that very topic, we have a lot of leaders in the room who are experts in changing companies from the inside. And I'll be clear, most of us are white. What specific, it's real, what specific expectations should we, the white community inside sustainability, be setting for ourselves to make a change when it comes to these really vital conversations that we tend to push off to the side or talk about in very vague terms? I'll go to Derek.
So you say most of you are white, right? In 1909, 80% of the people in this room would not have been considered white. Whiteness in 1909 was based on whether or not you were Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So you're Irish Catholic, you was not white. If you was Jewish, you was not white. If you was, you name the ethnic background that was not Anglo-Saxon, you were not considered white. It's a social construct. It's a fake dynamic to really create who's dominating, who's controlling modes of productions and cost of labor. And in that tribalistic way of viewing the world, as a nation, we're going to lose out over time if we don't transition away from that caste system. Because tribalism is a problem. Now, with that said, I was sitting with a business leader in New York, happened to be the former mayor. He's a good guy. Right? And we were having I had multiple conversations about the future, and the reason why he is a prolific philanthropist, because he's worried about the future for his grandchildren. For the leaders in the room, what will the world look like for your grandchildren if we continue to allow the social construct to dictate the outcomes of business decisions? What would happen if, in fact, AI technology absorbed 40% of the work and people no longer have a way to make a living and there is no social safety net? In fact, that will put your grandchildren in danger, because scarcity creates the worst common denominator in human behavior. We really need to be looking at how do we adjust for a global reality where the diversity of the globe is the reality of how we're going to be existing in this country. When I fly internationally and I land in Paris and I get off the plane, you see the colors of the world. You don't see the black, white, Latino paradigm we've created in this nation. So it's going to be really important for corporate leaders in this room and across the board to begin to consider the future realities for your grandchildren as we prepare for the future of work. Final point here. George Floyd was an occurrence that we all paused. Shock and horror. For those of us in the African American community, we wasn't surprised. It was just captured on video. You fast forward A Supreme Court decision this past summer gave companies an out not to live up to the George Floyd commitments. The current political climate, dependent on how November turned out, is one in which it's not about political parties. It's not about this candidate versus that candidate. It is about the future of democracy. Will we have one, or will we have something that's unrecognizable? And for the business community, consistency is the best predictor of future profits. The level of disruption around the governance structure that we are confronted with at this juncture is one in which would disrupt your consistency and could cause more harm to the future and the current of your companies than we recognize. That's why the social construct of race, which has been used as a tool, we must push away. The construct of gender equity must be addressed. This illusion of what's moral or not used as a tool to direct citizen behavior on how they cast their ballot is dangerous. The corporate community has a responsibility to lead the way differently than only considering your tax liability.
That's such a good reminder of the way corporations can have influence. And I want to close by asking each of you, since we're talking about influence on our keynote stage today, how do you think about your own role in influencing change? Wawa?
I think, well, I'm going to answer this contextualizing the presentation that went before.
Sure.
For Gen Z, and specifically Gen Z of color, ESG commitments and DEI commitments aren't just an add-on, they are a requirement for us to see a future with your organizations. Point blank, period. So I know there's a lot of pushback happening right now, but we have to acknowledge by next year, Gen Z will make up 27% of the workforce. That percentage is going to go up. And for us, we are going to hold you accountable. There's actually this new terminology, this new phenomenon. We've heard about quiet quitting. There's climate quitting, in which young people, specifically Gen Z and millennials, anyone under the age of 40, are leaving their jobs or declining offers because of lack of ESG commitments. This is how we see the future of our work, and it's either you're going to be a part of it or you're going to be left behind. So that's how I'm using my influence right now.
For us, I think influence is creating more demonstration projects around climate so people can see it's possible. We are moving our headquarters from Baltimore to DC and consolidating those offices. Our goal is to meet what's called the Living Building Challenge, where we are -0 carbon footprint, to show that not only our office space can exist there, but it's a mixed-use development with housing and entertainment space, all of which is our goal to raise the resources to meet that challenge. Why? Because we need to demonstrate that people can live off the grid in a healthy way, giving back to environment, giving back in ways in which we're not harming climate. For us, that's influence, because we're now living what we're advocating for, as opposed to giving beautiful cliches and speeches but never doing anything about it.
Wawa Gatheru, Derek Johnson, I'm so grateful for this conversation. Let's have a big round of applause for those speakers.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm going to do another one of these. Let's have a big inhale and exhale. The problem with guiding people to breathe is that you don't actually am so grateful to Derek and Wawa for that conversation and for really getting us thinking about what we can do to generally stop messing around when it comes to this just transition. Our next speaker, C.D. Glynn, is going to put a fine point on it. C.D. Glynn is the leader of PepsiCo's social sustainability and their foundation. And he's going to talk about how they're improving the lives of farmers while they're improving regenerative farming. Welcome to the stage, C.D. Glynn. C.D.
Good morning, GreenBiz. I love it. Let's bring the energy back. I have to think about what did I do to deserve to follow, or who did I harm to follow a Rhodes Scholar and the CEO of our nation's largest, most prestigious civil rights organization. But I'll do the best job I can, but I'm really grateful to be here. And I want to talk to you about how PepsiCo, as a global corporation, is really embedding this concept of just transition in everything that we do, end to end. But I know when you heard that this guy named C.D. Glynn, who leads social impact and the foundation for PepsiCo, was coming to talk to you, a lot of you thought, what is a guy from a soda company gonna tell us about a just transition? Well, the first thing that I have to tell you is that PepsiCo is more than just a soda company. PepsiCo is the U.S.'s largest food and beverage company, one of the largest in the world, and you know a lot of our brands, and 2 days ago, a lot of you might have indulged in a couple of our brands, given that it was the Super Bowl. And you know, it's really important to think about this because we have a philosophy really that you're all familiar with, to whom much is given. So as one of the world's largest food and beverage companies with brands, whether it be Pepsi and Mountain Dew or Gatorade or Life Water Aquafina, or on the food side, you think about Quaker Oats, or you may think about Stacy's Pita Chips, or you may think about Toes. Why Toes? Because we have a lot of Toes in our portfolio. We got Fritos, we got Cheetos, we have Doritos. There's lots of Toes in this portfolio. And it's really important for us to think about to whom much is given. We're a big company and we take that responsibility very, very, very close to heart. We want to ensure that as we grow and scale our company, 300,000 employees, we operate in 200 markets around the world, 1 billion people, 1 billion engagements every day with our products. That's a big responsibility. So I think about this as a get-to. It's an opportunity for us to do more good for the planet and more good for the people. That's what those engagements mean to me. And we also think about it's a have to. Because in those communities where we operate, there's an expectation. Again, this is beyond doing no harm. This is about how much good can we do as a company. And so it's a get-to moment for our company. It's a have-to moment. Communities expect it. They expect us to show up and show out. But also, we need to. We need to because our company and these brands are rooted in agriculture. Lay's is about potatoes and potatoes farmers. Doritos is about corn and corn farmers. All of our beverages, they're about water. It's the main ingredient in all of our beverages. And guess what? There's no Quaker without oats. And so, as a company whose brands are born in the field, rooted in agriculture, for us, this isn't a nice to have. This is a must do. We have to have a sustainable, regenerative, and inclusive food system for our business to survive, for our business to thrive, and our business can't thrive unless communities are thriving. We embarked upon an end-to-end strategic transformation, and at the center of our company, it's really about sustainability. It's at the heart of what we're gonna do. We're gonna go forward as a company with sustainability at the center of everything that we do. It's how we create value. It's about how we grow. And it's how we create real opportunities, operating within planetary boundaries, but for planet and also people. And that's what's really important with this conversation and what you heard from Huawei and Derek. That people and communities, that resilience building is at the center of what we do as a company. So yes, it's about stakeholder profit and shareholder profit and maximizing both of those, but it really is about sustainability at the center of all that we're doing. And so we think about being positive, and all of you have heard corporate leaders and corporate speak of being a positive force for good. It's essential to PepsiCo to be PepsiCo positive. Positive in how we source, positive in how we make our products and putting circularity in the center of making those products, and positive in the choices that we inspire. The choice that we inspire you to make as consumers. So I want to share briefly on how we have, yes, planetary sustainability goals, which all of you understand and are committed to, but also with each sustainability goal that we have, with every single one, we're putting people at the center of those goals. So it's not a nice to have. People and thriving communities is essential for us as a thriving business. And so we, as a company, we source 30 ingredients across 60 countries, across 7 million acres of land. We get all of our products. And we're transforming our entire agricultural footprint to be regenerative. And while we're doing that, we're ensuring that those who farm, yes, we want it to be regenerative, how they farm, but we're just as committed in terms of who's farming. Women are at the center of agriculture. A lot of you know that or should know that. That literally women feed the future and women feed the world. Over 70%, yeah, let's clap to that. Over 70% of people in the agricultural production system are women, but they're underutilized, under-resourced, under-supported. And so if we're going to talk about a regenerative food system, we need to put women at the center of that. And PepsiCo is committed to doing that. Water, a lot of you understand the positivity and the need for being net water positive. PepsiCo does as well. And while we're being net water positive, while we're replenishing as much water as we take out of the earth, we're also ensuring that people have access to safe drinking water. A commitment of 100 million people to have access. So we have conservation efforts, distribution efforts, purification efforts, but ensuring that people have access to safe water is essential to us as a company. Yes, the environmental planet goal, but the people goal as well. We leave no one behind as we make this transition, and that's what makes it just. GHG emissions. One thing, this is one of those fun fact moments I told you about our portfolio. We also have the largest private fleet in North America. We have more tractors and trailers and trucks than anybody, about 70,000. And we're converting this fleet decarbonization, we're converting them to Tesla semis. And this transition to net zero is essential. But again, as we transition, we have to ensure that we're reskilling and training and providing educational opportunities for those who have to come along the journey. And so we have a program within the PepsiCo Foundation where we're supporting access to education, particularly in Black and brown communities, to give them access to education from community college to 4-year degrees with historically Black colleges and universities. I went to Howard University. I'm a product of an HBCU. HU. So we are ensuring that we bring people along this journey as we convert our entire operations to thinking about being net zero. And we make a lot of products. You've heard me share that. These products, as we go forward, and as they are now, less sugar, less sodium, less fat, diverse ingredients in them. You buy a company like SodaStream, which PepsiCo did, because we're thinking about the future in terms of you being able to make your own beverages at home. So we're not having trucks that are emitting GHG emissions that are driving all across the US full of what? Plastic and water. That's what we're talking about. But when you have a company like SodaStream, you're able to not transport that plastic, not transport that water, not have those GHG emissions from the diesel trucks, and make it at home. So we're literally trying to inspire you with the choices that we give you. And in doing that, we also are using our capabilities for good. We're using our capabilities to create products that address real challenges in terms of food insecurity, hunger, malnutrition, and sustainable agriculture. And in terms of malnutrition, I'm so proud of a program that we have that's in Mexico and Guatemala, and it's scaling to India, to use our capabilities for good, to use our capabilities of making food products that literally reverse the effects of mild to moderate malnutrition. If you can make a Cheeto, you can make a healthier product that addresses malnutrition, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about using these capabilities, again, to bring people along in terms of making this transition just. And so we have these incredible products with Quaker that really are addressing mild to moderate malnutrition. And I want to close with this, to say that when we talk about being local, that's about being proximate to the people who are on the front lines and of making this transition, those who will be left behind if we are not focused on global initiatives but local action. We're talking about being leading. As one of the largest food and beverage companies in the world, we have this responsibility. We have this pressure. But you know what I call pressure? I call pressure the same thing that Billie Jean King, the famous tennis star, called it. She said pressure is a privilege. So it's a privilege for us to be able to do this great work. And we want to be lasting. We want to be lasting in our efforts, community-driven, bottom-up driven, efforts that really put people and communities and resilience building at the center of all that we do. And if we do that, and as we do that, we are leaving no one behind. We're doing no harm, and we're doing more good for the planet, and we're doing more good for the people. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, CD Glenn. Let's have a round of applause. CD just told us about the ways that PepsiCo is using its power to proactively bend the arc of history toward justice. Now, GreenBiz Group, we don't have the scale of PepsiCo, but we do try and model the concept of companies using their core business to make change. So to talk about our Emerging Leaders program, which is one way we do that, I'd love to welcome to the stage greenbiz.org program manager, Brian Lewis.
I love that song. Hello, GreenBiz. All right. My name is Brian Lewis, and I am program manager of greenbiz.org and lead curator of our illustrious Emerging Leaders program. Yeah. Okay. Quick show of hands. For our Emerging Leaders program, please clap once if you've heard of our Emerging Leaders program. Okay, so most of the people in this room. For those of you who don't know, the Emerging Leaders program grows and cultivates the next generation's sustainability professionals of color. And since 2017, we've grown and curated a community of nearly 300 diverse, sustainable champions of color who are actively changing the world in which we live. Yeah. And one of the favorite parts of my job is that I get the opportunity to come on stage and introduce them to you all. And so here today, I want our emerging leaders to stand, if you don't mind. Please, GreenBiz 24, let's give a warm Arizona welcome to our next, not just next, but the generation of now, our sustainability professionals of color, the emerging leaders. Yes. So, I'm just going to speak from the heart here. I have no script, I'll be honest with you. What we've seen over the last year is that DEI is under attack. Many programs, including ours, have lost funding, up to 90% of their funding, in fact. And it's important, not just to me, but to so many of these amazing young professionals, that we have an opportunity to see ourselves in this industry. And that's exactly what this Emerging Leaders Program does. Many of you, I imagine, have had an opportunity to interact with some of our emerging leaders over the course of this conference. And I genuinely hope that the rest of you get that same opportunity, now having met them. It's people like Larissa Crawford who remind me to be responsible over the words and how we express our love for our communities. It's people like Trace, Supriya, Deja, who remind me to vote in this next election. Right? It's people like Sherry, who remind me to take care of myself and my personal well-being, because I'm no good if I don't have me. Many of them are innovators, they're thinkers, they're truly inspirational, and I'm honored now to call them friends. And the realistic view that we have right now is that DEI is under attack, and if we don't want DEI to DIE, it's important that we leverage each and every voice in this room. The companies you represent, the people you know, because our emerging leaders deserve an opportunity to have mentors. Our emerging leaders deserve an opportunity to have resources. We're connecting people to jobs. William needs a job. Arlie needs a job. Who else needs a job? Oh, Supriya needs a job. Go Blue. Okay. It's important to me, and I take so much pride and joy in this program because I get an opportunity to be with these folks and to see the impact of the work realized by the fact that we're sitting here in this front row, having the emerging leaders be visible and highlighted at this organization. So in the spirit of Caitlin Curtis, who reminds me to dream big and think wild, I think it's important to ask this question. What would it take for us not just to fill this first row with the next generation sustainability professionals of color at GreenBiz 25, but to fill the first 7 rows with the inspirational leaders that we see here in this row right here? I ask and I leave you with that question. Please, I'm going to put my slides back up, please. Take a second to click on that QR code. That'll give you a direct line to connect with all of these emerging leaders right here. Please support greenbiz.org, support our Emerging Leaders Program, and support these folks, because these are only a sample of the many people that I had to say no to in terms of getting this opportunity. I thank you so much for your time. God bless you.
Hi, emerging leaders. Hello, everyone. We're back at the part of the program where I say nice things about our sponsors, to whom I am so incredibly grateful, particularly our foundational sponsor, Microsoft, as well as all of the premier sponsors and supporting sponsors that you see on this slide. The folks on this slide, their logos are so small because we are legion. Our sponsors are so many, and they're out there. Many of them have expo booths. They've got VIP events. They're in our breakouts. Who actually, raise your hand if you were in a VIP dinner or a reception yesterday? Okay, some of you. Oh, actually quite a few of you. So you're experiencing what our sponsors bring to us and bring to our event. They are part of this community and they're integral to it. So make sure you check out their booths in the expo. I have to tell you a story about the expo. Yesterday, Ginger Torres, who was on our stage for our talk about land acknowledgements, she had her school-age daughter, Kea, with her. And after her talk on the main stage, she went out and brought Kea into the expo. And apparently, I got texts from Ginger yesterday that apparently Kea could not stop talking about sustainable aviation fuel and direct carbon capture all night long. So it's at least working on Kea. It could also work on you. Thank you to our partners. Our convening partners have been holding big events this whole week, and it continues. It's absolutely phenomenal to see the leaders who these organizations that we partner with bring in. Our community partners bring us so much expertise, and they're really the kind of the backbone of what this community is. Sure, we're about corporate sustainability, but all of these organizations are what holds us together. So really appreciate that. With that, forgot to slide to this slide. We have sustainability partners, media partner, and net zero partner to recognize. We have a huge program that makes sure that our event is as sustainable as it can be. Of course, we are walking the talk. That's led by Morgan and Jess on our team, who both do a fabulous job. We're going to continue talking about influence, but we're going to take it a little bit of a different direction now. Has anyone been in a room at GreenBiz where AI was not mentioned? We are going to be leveraging our influence in this year and in years to come through technology. And so this next panel is going to look at what AI and other new tech can do for sustainability. It's led by one of my very favorite people in the entire world, Molly Wood, and it features, well, I'll let them introduce themselves, but Elizabeth, Molly, and Millie. Elizabeth, Molly, Millie, and Melanie. It's a lot of M's, who are here to educate us here. So thank you.
Can this be the walk-on music for the rest of everything that we ever do ever again? How wonderful is this event? Welcome, everyone. We do sort of sound like a girl band, like just a tiny bit. I'm just going to own that up front. I am thrilled. I am Molly Wood. I'm thrilled to be on this panel. I am going to have each of you introduce yourselves one at a time. I know that AI and biodiversity on its face sounds like a slightly unlikely set of bedfellows, but we're going to explain why it actually all really does come together. And as we mentioned, please, I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves, tell me what you're doing and how it intersects with biodiversity. And Melanie, I'll start with you.
Great. Thank you, and hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Nakagawa. I'm Microsoft's Chief Sustainability Officer, and thrilled to be on this panel. Really excited to get into the discussion about the role of AI in these critical ecosystems, and we'll get into where the data is, where the technology is, but needless to say, hopefully by the end of this 17 minutes, you'll walk out with a couple really great concrete examples of how technology solutions are really closing important data gaps.
Great. Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. I'm equally thrilled to be here on this panel. I'm Elizabeth Hunter. I'm one of the co-founders and also the Chief Operating Officer of TreeSwift. TreeSwift is a startup company using robotics and AI to capture landscape data, and really excited to just share with you as part of the panel just some of these new and innovative ways that we can think about using technology for nature-based solutions.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Millie. I am a postdoc at the National Center for Ecological Analysis and Synthesis and a core team member at Climate Change AI. A lot of my work thinks about how we can leverage AI not only to understand our ecosystems and the way they're changing, but to come up with strategies to mitigate impacts on nature.
So it seems like for AI to do its best work, it needs a lot of data. So I actually want to start with the data challenge around biodiversity, and I'll probably, Melanie, have you address like what we can do with what we have. But Elizabeth, it's my understanding that, actually we lack a lot of data to even pull insights from at this stage in the game, right?
That's exactly right. So I think about and how the landscape is changing for innovation in this space. There's two things that I'm really excited about. There's AI, and that is really crunching and synthesizing, coalescing, and looking at the insights that we can get from all of these really incredible data sources that are available to us. But on the flip side of that, there's the source. And I think one of the things as a technologist I'm super excited about is using technologies like robotics that we're really putting into practice at TreeSwift to fill in those gaps and think about new sources, new views, new perspectives of how we can actually interact and gather this data across the landscape. A really concrete example of this is at TreeSwift, we focus on data in forests, so above ground biomass. These really important carbon stocks that are critical to net zero goals, et cetera. And so one of the things that has been longstanding, at least in forestry and some of these solutions, is looking at sources of data from kind of a bird's eye view, so over the canopy.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. And at TreeSwift, we're really filling that gap. So with robotics, we can come in, we can actually work in concert with boots on the ground to have this view and kind of this new data source of under canopy. So looking at the crowns of trees and how that how we can infer and extract insights about these ecosystems and to think about how these new sources actually fuel how we think about measuring these things about biodiversity.
Right. Millie, I want to come to you about what we don't know, and then Melanie on what we are doing to solve that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question of what we don't know, and that's, I think, your work is really inspirational and super powerful and going to be incredibly critical. So when we look at biodiversity data, which is collected from all different sorts of streams, from people taking pictures on their iPhones and uploading them to participatory science platforms like iNaturalist and otherwise, to camera traps and acoustic monitors, imagery from drones and satellites, we think that maybe we have a lot of information about the world, but really that information is incredibly biased. And it's biased along social and political dimensions. We can see armed conflict in when and where we have data, colonialism in what information we have and who owns that information. We can see redlining in US cities in where we have biodiversity data. We have almost double the amount of biodiversity data in neighborhoods that were not historically redlined or segregated. And so we have to think a lot moving forward about how we can ensure that we fill those data gaps in such a way that we don't propagate these social inequities moving forward when we start to leverage all of this data and throw it into our AI models and our decision-making algorithms. Like, how can we ensure that those biases are not reflected?
No pressure, Microsoft. So talk to us about filling those gaps and what AI can do with the information it has now, and then how we get more and get it as clean as it can be, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting that.
Sure. So I think we haven't used the 7% figure yet, so let's put that out there.
Put that out there, yeah.
We both skirted past it. So 7% is the amount of actual data we have for our biodiversity and our ecosystems to date. So you talked about all these incredible technologies that are out there, from Landsat to satellites to soil, and that's fantastic. We're getting a lot of data from that. But that only covers around 7% of the data. So we're using AI to fill some of those data gaps that are out there. But frankly, the next piece is, why should we be doing this? What are the insights you can get from this information? I thought you did a great job talking about in the land space of understanding where those trees are growing and how they're growing. You can also use satellite imagery to know where deforestation could happen or is happening, because you could see when roads are being cut through forests to do greater deforestation and greater tree cutting. And you can see those things in advance before they actually get to the cutting of the forests, and alert the authorities and start to actually address deforestation earlier in the game. So there's an organization we're working with called Amazon, and that's one that's looking at Brazilian deforestation and trying to catch that before it happens. Another area is in poaching. Wildlife trafficking and poaching that happens, which is sort of a shocking figure figure about the number of animals that are poached on an annual basis. But you can use satellite imagery and this type of technology to start to see where humans are entering these different areas and these forest landscapes or these ecosystems to, again, alert the authorities as to where humans are entering these areas to get the authorities there earlier to respond. And then another area where you can use technology and satellite imagery and ecosystem analysis is around wildfires. And you can see that on two sides. So you talk about the importance of trees. The other side of it, the importance of trees for conservation, for environmental protection, for biodiversity and ecosystem services, also as carbon sinks, which are really important for the climate crisis that we are all working, so especially those in the room, to combat. But the other side of forests is when they burn, they emit carbon. And so last year, I think it's around 7 gigatons, I think is the stat that wildfires, the carbon from wildfires emitted. So if we can do better resilience and optimization and prediction around responding to and addressing wildfires, we also have multiple benefits that come from that. And so one of the ways we've been doing that is you can use technology and AI to look at large ecosystems to understand what's at risk, what are the factors that predict or increase the chances of hotter fires or more complex fires, and again, allocate resources directed at that to get out in front. The other piece too to the wildfire space is recently, after the devastation in Maui and the Lahaina fires, Microsoft partnered with Planet Labs to be able to provide responders and policymakers and others with information using AI to analyze the maps to understand exactly where the fire went, how far the fire went, what was affected, to really think about the post-disaster recovery side and how do you use these type of map imagery when you couldn't physically get access to certain areas. You can use that imagery to help people better understand what's happening. So there's really interesting, kind of examples of how to bring technology together with AI to close some of those gaps to yield, benefits for both people and planet.
Yeah, I love these specific examples because, as we mentioned, these can seem like strange bedfellows, but all of you have effectively determined that we should stipulate technology is going to be crucial in terms of gathering and the types of insights you mentioned. Let's turn to this idea of insights in action, because it sort of feels like we've all known that a lot of surveillance, a lot of satellite technology can gather data. The question that it seems like this next generation of AI is poised to answer is, cool, now what? So maybe I'll just come back this way. I'll start with you, Millie. Cool, now what? What can we do in terms of these insights and actions that we maybe couldn't do before?
Yeah, just a small question.
Yeah.
But I think going back to this
you have 8 minutes.
Perfect. Going back to this example of wildfires, if we all of a sudden now can understand where wildfires are, we can predict their spread at kind of unprecedented scales. We can then leverage this information and kind of the other flip side of AI, which is coming up with strategies to kind of suppress those fires or to mitigate their spread using like optimization algorithms. A lot of my work is thinking about how we can use all of this massive amounts of biodiversity data to think about how we prioritize investment in conservation, in restoration, in sustainable management on agricultural landscapes. So if we have all of this information, maybe it can help us make more strategic investments in these conservation measures.
So I think we kind of voiced the 7% statistic. Another kind of stat or thinking about the wildfire specific kind of use case is forests cover 30% of our planet. And when we think about AI and filling those gaps and all of the kind of the new sources of data coming in, like the ones that we're developing at TreeSwift, what's striking to me and something that I've kind of like learned kind of on this journey of kind of putting this technology into the hands of kind of boots on the ground and local folks working is that a lot of these kind of insights, whether they be coming from AI, kind of other analyses, still rely on kind of boots on the ground people going and still looking and verifying, and there is a level of kind of pull back the curtain, if you will, to not make the kind of this AI or machine learning process so opaque, but actually going on the ground and verifying and making things more transparent. So in the case of wildfires, one of the things that's really important is to understand the health of kind of the health of trees, how those pose a risk to various assets that can start wildfires. And so one of the things that's really powerful is that if you have, again, new ways to source and collect the data, you can work in concert with people whose job it is every day to ensure the safety and mitigate the risk of these disasters. And so I think it's a lot of times we think about, or there's a lot of kind of conversations about what does this AI mean? Is it kind of replacing, or kind of how is it coming into the conversation with folks kind of doing this most important work? And I think one of the things that I've been seeing, and like really like how the data, what the data is really showing, is that it's AI really working in concert with folks who have these insights, but making it more scalable, more systematic, to kind of extrapolate and really scale over the whole landscape.
I'd say to add to that, it's always hard to go the third in a panel. I would say to add to that.
Think of yourself as first all over again.
Exactly. Perfect. I don't know what the next question is. But so now what? I'd say on the insights piece, there's two areas. One is, how do you take all these data input, these insights, and increase productivity, increase economic benefit, increase outputs? So the phrase we often use is, how do you grow more crop per drop? So right now, I think it's around the typical farmer the farm will receive around 500,000 data points on a daily basis. That's expected to grow to millions of data points over the next decade. And so with all that insight, all that data, how do you create insights that you're allowed to grow more crop per drop, more efficiency, and higher productivity output to feed the world? That is, obviously a growing opportunity for all of us, for all these technologies to be a part of. So that's one area, is how you turn those insights into economic productivity. Another one is, how do you turn those insights to build trust in both the measuring, the verification, and the reporting in these systems that are so important to what we need, from solving and addressing the climate challenge, but also to investing in these solutions. Microsoft has a climate innovation fund. It's $1 billion innovation fund that's investing in innovative technologies that not only will Microsoft need towards our own sustainability commitments, but also that the world will need. And so we've recently invested in 2 companies that are addressing some of this, both the data challenge and the insight opportunity. So a company like Vibrant Planet or Yardstick looking at soil carbon measurement, and really being able to provide the measurement and the verification about what is the actual soil carbon content in these types of projects, that then allow people to then share that with the marketplace to say, this is what the carbon enhancement looks like for these types of for this practice that I'm using. And that really helps then on the reporting side. You're seeing a growing interest from policymakers and regulators, whether it's the Task Force on Nature-Based Disclosures or the European Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, that's asking for more information from corporations and others on nature-based disclosures and reporting. And so how do these tools help improve that? And recently, with our partners at Planet Labs, we produced a white paper looking at what some of the existing tools today, what they exist on biodiversity and nature-based, and how they can be used in current reporting, future reporting requirements that are out there to get companies and others ready for it. But between insights from an economic productivity perspective, but also insights for ensuring that there's trust and validity and verification in these systems that are so critical for the ecosystems we're going to need, I think there's a great opportunity here, and we're seeing that in practice today.
Right, and such a crucial foundational layer for policy, for enabling financial tools, all of the kind of tools we need. In our last minute or so, the theme of this event is, of course, listening and influence. There's, ultimately you are trying to get insights and analysis to create influence. Millie, you have written, though, about data gaps. You alluded to this earlier and how they can entrench inequities. Talk to us briefly in our last minute about the importance of making sure that we're listening to the right sources.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think it was brought up kind of time and time again in this conversation about collaboration with local communities, with people who are actually feeling the impacts of environmental change, of ecosystem degradation. I think another thing that is really important and really exciting about this conversation is kind of moving from this idea that like all we can do with AI and big data is to document degradation, that we can do more than that, that we can come up with solutions, that really there is kind of a positive lens on all of this, and moving towards that with local communities and with big companies that give us the capacity to scale up, which is ultimately what we need to do in the context of these planetary crises.
Amazing. Melanie, Elizabeth, Millie, thank you so much for an incredible panel. We wish we had an hour, but we don't.
You're the best. She's the best. She's the best. Thank you to Melanie Nakagawa, Elizabeth Hunter, Millie Chapman, and the inimitable Molly Wood. I am such a huge admirer of our next two speakers, Katie Ryan and Stuart Goldsmith. Katie Ryan is Director of Sustainability at GreenBiz Group, and she is my right hand, my genius collaborator in all of the programming that you see at the event and more. And I couldn't live without her, and I'm so proud to call her my friend. Stuart is a climate comedian, that's a thing, and a public speaker, and he's so wonderful and so charismatic that we've actually adopted him as an auxiliary member of the GreenBiz staff. We are going to hear from them to bring home these keynotes about influence, and you can actually see Stuart do his one-man show about the climate, stand-up show tonight at Meritage at 7 p.m. I have seen this show, and I can tell you it is not to be missed. Skip your dinner, have a liquid dinner with Stuart at Meritage at 7 p.m. You will not be disappointed. We're going to give you a little taste right now.
Other topics as well. And earlier this year, I was booked for an event in Zurich. And they got in touch with me and they said, would Mr. Goldsmith like to fly business class? Now, business class is the one bit that I hate about the whole experience, right? Because I hate walking through business class on your way to your bit, right? I lead a lucky life, and it's the only time in my life when I'm surrounded by people who think they're better than me and can back it up. So sort of walk through them, you know, like that, as they all look down their noses at you while seated beneath you, you know. I don't even know how that's possible, but they do. So when they said to me, would Mr. Goldsmith like to fly business class, I assured them in no uncertain terms that Mr. Goldsmith would, yeah, very, yes, right, yeah. Make that happen, yes. And if I'm totally honest, when I was in business class for the first time on the other side of the looking glass, once I had been carried onto the plane by the pilot. A champagne cocktail for takeoff, don't mind if I do. Metal cutlery, because obviously terrorists can't afford business class. By the time I was on that side of the looking glass, I have to admit, when the other people came on, a tiny part of me did start to think, maybe I have worked that little bit harder. I turned into the monster I despise. Now, I arrived at the event. We did the session. It went great. We had a chat afterwards in the bar, and one of the people that worked there said, and I have since researched this, it's completely true. They said, did you know that business class generates 3 times the carbon emissions of regular flight? 3 times. And I can see some of you are like, I too have a confession. I get it. It's 3 times worse because of the extra space you're taking up, the extra weight that you're taking up on the plane. It's 3 times worse for your carbon footprint, 3 times worse for your emissions. So I made a solid commitment starting as soon as I got home. No more business class for me. In fact, I'm going to use it as an opportunity for some climate communication. Okay, so whenever I get offered business class now, I say thank you so much, I appreciate the offer, but I decline business class on climate ethics grounds. And I explain why it's an opportunity to have that conversation with a new person who's in the field of, booking flights for people and what have you. Maybe they'll pass that information on. Because I tell you what, flying is amazing. Business class, obviously, magnificent. But nothing feels as good as walking through business class. Knowing that you were offered it, but declined on climate ethics grounds.
That's the little grey box.
That's right. Stu.
Hi.
I am so glad to be here with you. And okay, if we stand, because it feels awkward to do a sit
Yes,
down
I don't like
with
to
a
sit down. That's
stand-up.
not in my remit
Okay,
at all.
great.
And thank you, before we begin, for putting me through the exquisitely vulnerable experience of standing back there whilst an entire room full of people watched me do comedy that I had no control over anymore.
Well, I'm so glad to be here with you. I'm glad to be here with you, my climate leaders, many of us who think we are also comedians. Regardless, we need all the help we can get. So, Stu, what do you got for us?
Well, thank you. I think that's an interesting point, the idea of you needing all the help you can get. Because in comedy we say the problems are the material. That's where all the comedians' material comes from. You have a problem in your life, a problem in society, a political or environmental problem, and you pour over it and you try and crack into it, and that's where you find the funny stuff. So the problems are the material. And as a climate comedian, what a relief, because there are so many problems. There are so many problems. And so I have this infinite amount of material to work with as I'm sort of processing my own climate dread. That's where the show originated from. It was a few years ago, realizing that I couldn't think about or I couldn't write about anything else, and wanting to transmit that to other people, and then recognizing that maybe there was a need for it or a desire for it, because I know that working in climate, many of you will swing wildly between hope and then despair on a day-to-day basis, feeling completely burnt out, feeling as challenged as I do when you come across a new fact or a conversation here sparks something when you realize, oh, this compostable cup, it's not all that compostable unless it goes a special process. I didn't want to know that. And you can feel really negative about it. You can feel really upset, but the problems are the material, so that's the bread and butter to me. And also, what it means is that when I do the show, and some of you can come and see tonight, not all of you, there won't be enough room, but do line up as swiftly as you can. But also, I have a kind of a version of it that I offer to businesses where I kind of brief with the CSR leader, the CSO, and I kind of work out what messaging they've been saying so long that no one's hearing it anymore. And I say to them, what would you say to your CEO if you could sort of slap them against the face? I'll try and make that funny, and I'll try and weave it in, and then I'll come and do an event for you, and then you can put that in front of them and say, see, we all saw you laugh at that guy, and now you know the stuff. And whenever I've said that to people here at GreenBiz, I've heard the sentence, oh, we need that. And that is not a sentence that comedians ever hear. So I'm very, very pleased to be here.
And I know that comedy is about connection. Like, you've already connected with this audience right in 2 minutes. And how are you doing that kind of connection on a hard topic like the climate crisis?
So connection in comedy, I think, it's a connection with your audience, and that connection is brought about through being authentic. I think in order to be authentic, you need to make yourself vulnerable. You need to genuinely make yourself vulnerable. You need to sort of have genuine risk to what you're saying. I wish I'd known as a child, I wish someone had said to me, oh, if you want to, they should give this lesson in schools. They say, if you want people to like you, tell a story where you fail. I wish I'd heard that earlier in my life. I thought you had to boast about your achievements. I mean, I realize I'm in America now. You may have a different approach, but certainly in the UK, and I think this is universal, if you can say to someone, honestly, I'm struggling with this. I don't know what to do about that. I'm challenged by this. I'm really worried about that. Then you can make, through taking that risk, you can make an authentic connection with people, and you can communicate with them authentically. And I think that's so important to get people to understand your messaging, whether it's internal comms or whether it's your messaging to your consumers, whoever it is, or the people above you, whoever. If you can say what you really mean with an authentic voice, and it helps, you have to be personal, you have to be specific. That joke there in the business class joke about metal cutlery. I said metal cutlery because obviously terrorists can't afford business class. People laugh at that because if you have been a business class traveller, you'll know you get metal cutlery, and you probably noticed that that was weird and not what you'd thought was allowed, but you didn't notice that you'd noticed it. So that's the skill of a comic, is trying to draw out those things that people have noticed that they haven't noticed that they've noticed. So you have to be really detailed. You have to be, I think of it in terms of like if I asked you now to draw a hand, most of us, untrained graphic artists, we would draw a sort of blob with 5 blobs coming off it and go, there we go, that's a hand. We would draw what we think a hand is supposed to look like. But an artist, real artist, would, I say real artist to separate from comedians, but a real artist would go, what do I actually see? What is the shadow? What's the light? Where are the lines? And that's what we try to do, to be as specific and detailed as possible with the stories that we tell based on an authentic connection with the audience.
And I'm sure that this doesn't happen to you often, but when a bit does fail...
How dare you?
You make yourself vulnerable.
Yes.
And no connection.
Yes.
What do you do?
That can happen. That happened to me at Wembley Arena in front of 16,000 people. I walked out on stage. I'd been told I had the mic in my hand, and the sound tech backstage had said to me, make sure you keep the mic right up close to your head, right up close to your mouth so they can hear you. And I walked out on stage for the first time at Wembley Arena. On the back of the stage it says, "Hello Wembley," in huge letters. And I was so caught up in the sort of the majesty of the moment, I went, "Hello!" Like that, and oh my God, 16,000 people saw me make this sort of awful amateurish mistake. But I have to remind myself that my job, when things go wrong, I have to remind myself that my job is simply to build a house of cards. If you've ever seen anyone build a house of cards in triangles, the reason it's compelling to watch is because there is real risk. It could go wrong. If you saw someone build a house of cards with sticky tape and glue, you wouldn't watch it for 2 seconds. What would be the point? So I have to remind myself, if I'm to be authentic, I have to take real risks. The risk is what makes it so compelling. So when something goes wrong, if my joke goes wrong, if someone slams the door and blows my house of cards over, all I can do is smile to myself, take a deep breath, and calmly start trying to rebuild it. So it can go wrong, and it hurts when it goes wrong, but there's no point crying about it. You just have to go, oh, never mind, start again.
And do you think GreenBiz 24 can do that?
Yes, I think anyone can do that. I think certainly some of the incredibly, I mean, I've met so many people here just in the last 24 hours. I think that, I was interviewing some people yesterday for the live stream, and I would chat to them beforehand and say, what's going on? And they'd tell me what was really going on. And then we'd get on with all due respect to these wonderful people I was interviewing, I'd say, what's going on? And they'd tell me the slightly more mediated version of what's going on. And I think certainly here, if not in your own organizations, I think it's so valuable to say the unsayable, to say the real thing, the thing that makes you feel vulnerable, to say the thing which you feel like, well, I mean, between you and me, or I don't know. You might feel like you don't want to share that because it makes you vulnerable. I would suggest, and we talked about this, maybe this is a challenge for you for the rest of your day here at GreenBiz. If the next time someone asks, what are you into, what are you talking about, what are you challenged by right now, if you can push yourself to try to say what you really mean. And so we thought to make this easier for the session after this, wherever you go, where you're having lunch or what have you, if someone asks you what's going on, just as you ask them, just grab it, just give them a little signal, just that, just touch your earlobe, and that means I am happy to have a real conversation with you about what you really mean and what I really mean. So try that for the rest of the day and see if you're able to just inspire some more meaningful conversations. I feel like some of you are going to do that, and there's one person in the room who's got an itchy ear who's like, this is going to be a nightmare. The rest of my day's ruined.
And what's on the other side of risk? You know, like why aren't people saying what they really mean?
Yes.
Why do you think that's happening?
The risks that we take are different, right? My risk is I lose my dignity. If I do a routine, it doesn't work. Oh, this is awful. I feel terrible. How bad is that, really? You'll get over it. Well, that was a great moment to leave, sir. My dignity. Your risks will be different. I know that. You're risking, maybe what you're risking is sort of having a predictable rest of your day. You know, if you really take a risk and say what you mean, maybe that's the risk that you're thinking, oh, if this goes wrong or I'm misinterpreted, maybe you lose the predictability of the rest of your day or your week. You know, and you need to be careful. You need to carefully choose the risks that you take. If you want to be authentic, you have to share your real self. But not all of it. You have to sort of choose on purpose and with purpose the parts of your real self that you really want to share. So you have to choose those things very specifically. And I think that allows you to be really intentional about sharing what you want to share. And then, you know, you don't need to take risks. You don't need to make jokes about your stock prices or endanger anything that's really, I think I said stock prices there. Is that a thing? I meant share prices. You don't know. Look to some random person for help. He blinks twice. I'm out. But my point is, you have to decide which risks to take. But you can still do that in an authentic way, I think.
And you and I have given some examples of vulnerability when we've been talking about this, and you were sharing a really great story about being in the forest.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. This is an example, really, of showing vulnerability to an audience and choosing what I share, and also being detailed, that thing about drilling down into the detail. If I say, I have a bit of material about becoming increasingly resentful of my young family whilst on a forest walk. And if I come out and say to an audience, oh, you know, it's hard having kids, well, so what? So far, so bland. No one cares. But if I'm detailed and if I share and I take a risk and say, oh, I'm going to say a thing I really think and I don't know if people are going to connect with this. The line in the show, that's a new show, it's not been released yet in a special, but what I say is I'm sort of imagining an argument with my wife where I'm saying, God, I can't cope with this. I resent them and I resent you. I resent you more. I made them. I only met you. And I'm so glad you're laughing because the risk there, if that falls flat, I'm this bastard. Oh, God. Why is this man so mean to his wife and children? But if I can share that with you in a safe way, in managed conditions, where I've chosen a piece of myself and said, yes, I think if I'm detailed about this emotion, that will resonate with other people who found themselves in that emotional state.
And so you've been up here helping us all with the extra help that we need. And do you have any closing advice, recap of thoughts? What's the big thing you want to leave with?
I think that of the various bits of work that I do in a business sphere, the thing that I think is most enjoyable, a lot of this for me is based on my background as a podcaster. I've spent the last 12 years interviewing over 450 comedians from all over the world in real forensic depth. It's like the only not funny comedy podcast. And you'd love it. It's very fascinating. You won't laugh. And drilling into them, and it started off as an attempt to find out how people write their jokes, and it quickly turned into how do people cope? How do they cope with the challenges of a life, a creative life? How do they cultivate their resilience? How do they cultivate their authenticity? How do they cope with criticism? How do they cope with isolation? All of those things that sort of have parallels for all of us. And I think for me, the biggest element of it is authenticity and being honest and saying what you genuinely mean. And I think that's so important now. I was watching a fabulous talk earlier on in one of the many rooms in this labyrinthine venue, where the people on stage were talking about what it meant to them to really communicate with their audience. And I think if you can do that from the basis of an authentic connection, where you make yourself vulnerable, then you will be streets ahead of your competition.
Well, I hope all of us do a little today. If you want to catch more Stu, and I'm sure you do, you can catch him at 4:15. We're doing slide deck karaoke. This is where people in the audience raise their hand to present a deck they have never seen before.
Come along to that. It's only going to work if there's loads of us.
I got a disco ball from the amazing James Ball, so it's going to be a good time. And also 7 p.m. at the Meritage, Stu is doing a whole set. So again, line up swiftly for that.
Start lining up now.
Big round of applause for Stuart Goldsmith.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to have you.
Thanks a lot.
Show! Thank you. I will see you tonight at Stuart's set at 7 p.m. and 8:30 is the after party at Meritage. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Livestream Hub following the closing keynotes of GreenBiz 24. As I'm sure you can hear, we have people entering the hall, leaving the keynotes right now, and all the buzz that's happening around us. I'm the Livestream co-host, Sarah Golden, and I'm joined by
Nathan Rajendran, fellow co-host, and yes, Sarah, the energy in here, like I've been saying every single time, has been great. There's a lot of different vibes going on in the keynote, from laughter and comedy, and the most recent keynote that just ended with Katie Ryan, to a little bit more of the action-oriented keynotes with C.D. Glenn and Derek Johnson from the NAACP. So we had a lot of different diversity in conversation, which I thought was amazing.
And those conversations are going to continue here on the Livestream Hub. In just a moment, we're going to hear from C.D. Glenn, as well as Zoe Chance, who is one of the speakers from yesterday. And who are you going to be talking to today?
I'm going to be talking to quite a few people. I'm going to be talking to Matt Hill from One Tree Planted, Wawa Gatheru, and Deja Odom, who's one of our emerging leaders, which was the program highlighted earlier on the stage today. We're going to be talking about Gen Z's role in the sustainability workforce and what it means to be a youth in this space right now. So that is personal to me, and I'm really excited for that conversation.
I loved on the main stage when she talked about climate quitting and how Gen Z is now quitting over companies that don't have good sustainability and climate goals. So inspiring.
Very powerful. Well, we'll see you all for those interviews shortly. Thank you for tuning in.
Companies have tried to manage complex workflows of products, people, and processes through data silos, disparate systems, and complex spreadsheets. Sphera Cloud is the software standard for integrated ESG performance and risk management reporting.
Every day, all over the world, Prologis helps businesses of all sizes lower their carbon footprint and scale their supply chains. With a portfolio of logistics and real estate and an end-to-end solutions platform addressing the critical initiatives of global logistics today. Learn more at Prologis.com.
Welcome back to the Livestream Hub. I'm Sarah Golden. I'm delighted to be joined here by Zoe Chance from the Yale School of Management. Is that right?
That's right.
Yes. And C.D. Glenn from PepsiCo.
Yes.
And it is, yeah, I've enjoyed both of your talks on the main stage. C.D., I wanted to ask you about something you just mentioned about inspiring people to make better choices. I feel like this is such a challenge in sustainability with so many brands coming out with more choices that are more friendly to the planet. And I'm curious, what have you learned about inspiring people to make better choices?
You know, this is a really important topic, but I also have to say the intimidation level of sitting on the sofa with Zoe, who influences your superpower. When you say inspiring people to make choices, it's really tough. But I'll say at PepsiCo, we are committed to business and PepsiCo being a positive force for good. And so we're trying to inspire through our own actions, but also through the opportunities that we give to others. So positive in our agriculture, positive in how we make and move our products, but also the products that we make. And so making them inspirational in the sense that people are looking for less salt, less fat, less sugar in some of their products, but also the ease of use. And so something like a soda stream, where you're talking about how do you create your own beverage with your own flavor palette. So all of these are sort of demonstrations through our actions, but also through our aspiration, that we are a business and a company that's sort of saying we want to not do no harm, we want to do more good for more people. So hopefully we can inspire through our actions, but also through our aspirations to really say that as a company that we can be positive for communities, positive for the planet, but also positive for people on an everyday decision-making process where they can make positive choices for themselves, and hopefully that's inspirational.
Yeah, I completely agree that making choices easy to make is such an essential part to being disruptive. And Zoe, I absolutely loved your book, Influence is Your Superpower. And one story that stood out to me in this was a story you had about meatless Mondays versus Beyond Meat. And I was wondering if you could briefly share that story and what that tells us about human psychology.
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief. The Meatless Monday fiasco was what happened when the Google food team was trying to do something nice for the planet and for people, how people make better choices, make it easy, by feeding them a meatless meal at 1 out of 24 cafes, 1 day of the week, and it was a pilot project, 1 month of the year, and they proclaimed this as Meatless Monday, and you may have heard of this movement, it was widespread. What happened was that frame that was a loss-based frame of we're taking away your meat, and what it implied that we're taking away your meat because you are a bad person, got some people so upset that they hosted a pig roast in the parking lot and invited everybody, and they even took the plates, cups, napkins, and stuff from that one cafe in Mountain View. And after that, this was when the Google food team brought on our Center for Customer Insights at Yale to say, hey, how can we help people make better choices more easily and by accident and without making them mad? And in contrast, what you brought up is the Beyond Meat example, which is a beautiful frame that is actually doing the same thing. It's taking away the meat, but it's not saying, we're taking away the meat, you bad person who hates the environment and hates animals and is a murderer. It's saying, here's something delicious. This is even better than what you have now. And I'm a huge fan of Beyond Meat, and I've been very excited to see their success. Now the whole industry of plant-based meat is kind of like, oh, we don't know how much it can grow, so I'm waiting for lab-based meat.
Yeah, and that's so interesting to me of how much, I've been working in sustainability for about 10 years now. I work in energy a lot, and I see this come up in the energy transition around electric vehicles, and people hate this idea of like losing the thing whether they wanted it or not. And so I know that the meat moment we're in is also an interesting one, but what advice do you have for sustainability professionals moving forward to make it seem like an expansive frame instead of taking things away?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are doing this well already, and all of us can talk about it more, practice it more, do it better, which is look for the hope, look for the positive frame, look for what we can be excited about and share that rather than here's everything that you need to sacrifice. There will be sacrifices for business, for people, but the way for us to sustain our own enthusiasm and to share our great ideas will be looking for points of light and highlighting those.
And CD, what have you learned about engaging your customers and achieving your goals in broader communities? Because I know you're working throughout your supply chains.
You know, it's a really important point, I think, as you said, not only to have people, whether they're consumers, whether they're customers, or whether they're internal colleagues, feel like as we move towards being a more positive company and positive on our agriculture and our value chains and the choices that we make, that we're not taking something away, that we're additive and that we're inclusive. So those have been really important components that I'm adding value to other efforts. So we have sustainability initiatives, we have inclusive growth initiatives, and so part of my job as the global head of social impact and leading the PepsiCo Foundation is sort of how are we adding value? How are we useful to our business leaders' transformation to really create great brands? PepsiCo is the U.S.'s largest food and beverage company, one of the largest in the world, and so we source crops from 30 different crops from 60 different countries. And as we're educating people about how big and expansive we are, we also talk about this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity. To whom much is given, much is required. So we can actually do more. We can have great financial performance while we're actually doing good. And so when it's additive and not necessarily a zero-sum game, it becomes something that people can embrace because they feel like they can continue on their journey, maybe with some sacrifices, but that the benefit will be twofold, that we're growing the pie in terms of that expansiveness. And then that it's inclusive as we're bringing others along the journey. And so it's not taking something away. It's sort of always trying to shape my influence without the authority to change what they're doing, but to influence them somewhat through incentives, saying, hey, you're doing well with this endeavor, whatever it may be, whether it's how you're sourcing, how you're making products, but also if we added a component that helped communities, really be able to do more or be able to benefit more, it's not taking anything away. You actually get a double benefit. And people always want, a supersized impact. And so this is where it's been really, really positive in the company to lead social impact, to say that our brands have purpose. They're great products, whether it's Lay's potato chips or Doritos or any of the beverages. Those are great, but we also can make them maybe healthier. Or we can look at how we have people think about where those potatoes in those potato chips come from. And so as we're trying to thrive as a business, helping my colleagues and the community understand that we want communities to thrive with us, it's really a lot of pressure, but it's also a privilege. And I talk about it being one of those things where the privilege of really helping us be more and helping individuals have more is something that they look upon, not as something taken away from them, but something that's really adding more value to their endeavors. So when I show up, people are pretty happy that they're sort of saying, he's not coming to take something away, he's coming to sort of really supercharge the positive impact that we want to have. It works, but then, in other instances, it's sort of like more work to do. But again, the greater good is what plays out in the end.
So I'm curious, we are at an event full of sustainability professionals, many of whom have been in this work for years and years. And a lot of these people are involved because they love the planet and they love people and they give a lot. And also there's a lot of, negative news that's coming around how we're actually doing against our goals. And I've been curious about personal resilience, whether people are taking care of themselves. So I'd love to ask you, Zoe, what are your recommendations around personal resilience?
A lot of my favorite people do the worst job of taking care of themselves because they are so committed to helping other people, helping the planet, being kind, saying yes to people who come and ask them for help or a favor. And to use the oxygen mask analogy, take care of yourself first. And that if you want to be able to really contribute at the highest level that you can, you have to be having enough time and sleep and resources and exercise and resilience and friends to be able to do that. So it starts with saying no. And the first challenge of my class at Yale is 24 hours of no. So I encourage anybody watching, listening, who wants to try it, say no for 24 hours to every person who comes to ask you for something. Maybe try saying no to that thing, but yes to the relationship. So being warm and enthusiastic, like, oh my God, no, that sounds absolutely terrible. But it's okay, like you can tell that I like you, right? And you can just say, no, thank you, but let's do something else some other time. When you practice saying no, you get more comfortable with other people saying no. And what that does is it helps you be the kind of person who asks without pressure. Like I heard in your demeanor when you were talking about persuading people, that you're somebody who shows up in the room and you're like, I got an idea. And people are like, okay, CD, what is it? Right? To be that kind of person, you have to be comfortable with saying no, hearing no. And then other people will be more likely to say yes because they'll feel good about it.
You know, I want to add to that. You know, we think about this as, again, in the space that we operate in where it is about giving. I'm asking people to give their time. I'm asking them to give their talent. The company giving our treasure to communities. But sometimes it is saying no. And it's also framing fewer, bigger, better. So like, by saying no to some things, you can say yes to something that can be more impactful. Because you can have 10 yeses and literally what we call spray and pray. Spray a lot of yeses around, but have very little impact, where if you said no more often, then one positive yes can have an outsized impact. So I love that saying no sometimes really leads to a bigger yes.
Well, C.D. Glenn, Zoe Chance, thank you so much for joining me today and for your leadership and wisdom.
Thank you, Sarah Golden.
It's a great opportunity.
Pleasure.
So there's a number of things that farming and agriculture really can do to help with climate change in a big way. Farming is becoming more important to really help save the environment and do the right things. So we have great water quality in the future. We have great soils that we can continue to grow food. You know, with the whole carbon market, there are going to be some dollars available for farmers that do some of these things that reduce carbon. And I'm working with Baird on enrolling our fields into their program. If we think about it in the United States, we produce an awful lot, and we really need, as farmers, I think, take good care of our land so that it'll continue to take care of us.
Hi, I'm Faith Taylor, Kyndryl's ESG Sustainability and Impact Officer, and I'm here to talk about Kyndryl. Who is Kyndryl? Well, Kyndryl is one of the largest IT infrastructure companies in the world. We have over 240 data centers. We're in over 60 countries. We have over 80,000 people. What's incredible is that at Kyndryl, we have built sustainability into the foundation of the company. And what you see here is our corporate citizenship report that outlines what we have done within 2 years, reporting on our environmental program and making a commitment to be net zero by 2040. We also have made a commitment within our social and governance programs, but what's been really important is that it is not only our CEO, but our board of directors, but also our associates globally, like our Green Guild, with over 400 members developing solutions globally. So I'm here to talk to you about an incredible study that we launched called the Global Sustainability Barometer. And the barometer actually measures the challenges and opportunities that companies face implementing sustainability. It was done in over 16 countries, in 9 business verticals, and also outlines the challenges around technology, around people, and strategy. One of the major findings is that 85% of the companies say that sustainability is important and is strategic. But what's really interesting is only 16% has integrated it into their business. That's the opportunity. And we launched this Global Sustainability Barometer with Microsoft. Why? Because we believe that in order to mitigate climate change, we have to scale solutions. And you scale solutions leveraging technology together to make an impact. What are some of the solutions that we are bringing forward here? Well, within Kyndryl, we have the capability to look at your IT infrastructure and get the data all in one place using our bridge solution. We also can help you migrate to the cloud. We can help you in terms of digitizing your workspace. We can help you with your cybersecurity and looking at your AI and data analytics. Powering global solutions is what GreenBiz is all about. I'm proud to be here to talk about how we can leverage the partnerships, the technology companies, the nonprofit organizations, and how we are developing global opportunities, but more importantly, solutions. Solutions that scale. We know climate change happens all over the world. It doesn't happen in one place, it happens globally. So you need solutions that scale. And that's why I'm here to talk to you today, because I'm proud to participate and be part of the solution. We are here, and it will continue to be an opportunity for us. And as I look at what the opportunity is, I empower everyone who's looking at this video to do one thing in their sphere of influence. That one thing can be in your company, can be at home, can be in your community, because we can develop solutions together. I'm so proud to have been in this position for over 18 years, helping to develop solutions not only at Kyndryl, but at companies that are in manufacturing, in the hospitality industry. And let me tell you something, everyone cares. And why do we care? Because we want to leave a legacy for our children and a future which is sustainable and gives equitable access. That's why I'm here today to talk to you from Kyndryl, where we have embedded this into the foundation of our company, and we call it the heart of progress. Progress is about having empathy, compassion, and understanding that we can develop incredible solutions together and make an incredible difference. Thank you so much for having me here, and I look forward to seeing what you will do to help empower our future.
When it comes to infrastructure resilience, your big ideas may take a hit from reality. As engineers and builders at Black & Veatch, reality is our strong suit. So ask the what ifs. We help with what next.
Thank you to Kyndryl for being a sponsor of the Livestream Hub and also for that presentation. I'm Sarah Golden, and I'm here with Jonathan Schadenfrey. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Schadenfrey from Deloitte. And so thank you for coming and being here today. My question for you is about the carbon markets. What is the difference between the voluntary and the regulated carbon markets?
Sure. So the regulated carbon market is one that is required for companies to adhere to certain rules and regulations. It's installed by the CARB, which is the California Air Resources Board. The ARB is the regulatory body that operates in California. They also have other jurisdictions with Quebec. as well, where they regulate how much emissions an organization can potentially emit at a certain time or for a certain window. And then they also provide auctions for the excess, and they limit how much carbon credits an organization could purchase as a result of their operations overall. The voluntary market is any company can go into a voluntary market and acquire carbon offsets to offset their emissions in order to manage their carbon emissions overall.
So with the regulated carbon markets, does that only apply within California if it's the California area?
Be domiciled there, but they do have operations there, and they would be dictating the cap and trade in terms of their emissions overall. So yes.
Got it. So just about any large organization would then be subject to that.
Most likely.
So something else I hear about is the idea of there being good carbon projects. So what is a good project?
Sure. There's probably some principles that organizations need to consider when they think about a good carbon project. It needs to be measurable, it needs to be verifiable, it needs to be enforceable, it needs to be additional, and it also needs to be permanent. So those are the five criteria that organizations should probably consider when they are evaluating a good project.
And what are the safeguards that when organizations are looking to procure these carbon credits, what are the safeguards in place? How do you know that it's a good project?
It's a great question. I think there's a lot of organizations, and there's probably a lot of tools and advisory services out there that can help organizations. So there's audits, there's on-the-ground audits that organizations can perform. There are tools that have satellite technology where they can do measurement and verifications, where they can kind of see what is happening in the globe. But it is something that is evolving, and it's something that organizations really need to be on top of. I just had in a situation where two clients had a dispute over a project because of the border. The border wasn't in where they thought it was going to be, and it actually exceeded a certain jurisdiction, and that jurisdiction precluded them from being allowed to have those carbon projects.
Well, the border of the project itself.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how are we doing in creating these good projects? I know that there's so many organizations that are counting on these carbon credits in order to meet their climate goals. How are we doing in the actual inventory to be able to meet the demand for them?
I think the inventory is growing. The market is growing in terms of demand. The supply is also growing. There's a lot of organizations out there that are creating the good carbon projects. It's an evolving market like any other. And given that the market is nascent, I'd say that there's probably a lot of work to be done. What I've seen is a trend towards carbon insetting, where organizations are looking more inwards into their value chain rather than outwards to a market.
So if you're a company that's wanting to get involved with this, what guidance do you offer? Where should organizations get started?
The trend I've seen is really looking at carbon reduction, optimizing your value chain, doing as much as you possibly can to reduce your current carbon based on your current operations, looking at opportunities to potentially offset or to remove carbon from your business overall, find replacement opportunities for your projects.
Got it. So it should be the last step. First, you reduce everything you can, and then you actually turn to these projects.
100%.
Yeah, and then where do you go?
Then where you go is really potentially looking at a carbon market, or you're looking at alternative devices that could potentially remove carbon from the atmosphere. So it's really looking at substitution assets to really manage your carbon emissions overall.
Well,
and then also stakeholder engagement, because it's a journey with others. So being able to engage with stakeholders is also critical.
Well, Jonathan Schuldenfrei, thank you so much for joining me here and for navigating this carbon market world.
Thank you.
Farming isn't easy. At best, it's uncertain, because when times get tough, we double down on what we've always known. Agriculture is how we'll create a safe, sustainable, and affordable food system for all. Agriculture is how we'll lift up our communities. Agriculture is how we'll protect the land for the next generation. Agriculture is how we'll drive change. Because no matter the challenge, agriculture is how we'll get it done.
e-waste is the fastest growing waste category in the world.
As consumers, we are wanting the latest, next, and best technology. And so we are replacing cell phones and tablets in much shorter timeframes.
We were one of the first to figure out how to process e-waste, and we have been one of the largest end recyclers of end-of-life electronics, discarded electronics since then.
I'm joined by Alyssa Cho from Bayer Crop Sciences. Thank you so much for joining us in the Livestream Hub.
So happy to be here.
So to start out, I know you work on the development in carbon markets in agriculture. Can you tell me a little bit about what transformation is happening in agriculture right now?
So what's really amazing about agricultural-based solutions is that you're both supporting farmers in changing what they're doing on the farm, but you're also able to make significant impacts in reducing climate change. So by farmers making practice changes such as switching to no-till or adding cover crops into their system, they're actually reducing how much they're putting into the environment, but they're also sequestering carbon in that process. So it's not only providing that benefit of a carbon credit, but also providing a lot of benefits on the farm as well.
It sort of sounds like the farmers are the superheroes of this story. How are you engaging farmers to do this?
Yeah, so what's really interesting is that we have a unique position in the market because we have an existing relationship with farmers and we have a foundation of trust, which is really important when you're asking farmers to do something differently that's going to affect their livelihoods. And so we work really closely with them to ensure that we're giving them sound agronomic advice so that they're successful in the practices that they're doing on the farm.
Yeah, and how are you finding the reception? How it seems like it can be hard to get people to actually change practices, and this also seems like a linchpin. So how are you finding that process?
Yeah, so right now, especially as we see an ever-changing climate, farmers also feel this in their operations, and so they're aware of how the climate change is affecting their operations, and they're looking for ways that they can become more resilient. And actually switching to these regenerative practices help with their resiliency and their long-term yields over time. So if you start to tell that longer term story, you can really speak to the heart of what they're doing.
Can you tell me a little bit about the connection between soil health and climate change and sustainability?
That's a very long topic, but basically, as you continue to build organic matter in the soil, you're able to actually capture carbon in that process. So the more organic matter or plant material that you can keep in a field, the more of that carbon that you're going to sequester, and you're also going to have the benefits of the soil health that's related to the organic matter. So the more that you can leave on the fields, the better off the field is going to be, and the soil as well.
Yeah, well, you did a great job of summarizing a very complex topic quickly. Tell me a little bit about the initiatives you have going on to really encourage regenerative agriculture and keep track of where we are on this journey.
Yeah, so for what we realized is that farmers are at all stages of the journey. And so we actually launched a program called Foreground, which really supports growers wherever they're at in their regenerative ag journey. So whether it's just starting to explore what that might look for their operation, or if they're looking to adopt or even expand on their operation, we're able to support them at whatever stage that they're at and help to give them the resources that they need, and also connect them to financial incentives through programs where we can work with a company that's looking to reduce their scope 3, or even creating a carbon offset credit that we sell.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about that. So when we're talking about other companies, we're like surrounded by organizations, many of which may have food within their supply chains or some sort of product. How should they be engaging with regenerative agriculture to help drive this forward?
It's such a key part on how they can make an impact within their supply chain. And I think it's also just such a great story that you can help improve the livelihoods of the farmers that you're sourcing from, while also gaining your benefit of reducing your scope 3 emissions. So for us, we've worked with several companies and worked directly on projects such as with Purdue, where we've worked on helping them achieve their goal of having a low carbon chicken and a low carbon food oil product on the market. And we've also recently announced a partnership with Mars Pet Care, where we've been helping them to reduce within their supply chain to reach their ultimate goals of having a low carbon sourcing source.
Where are you finding organizations can best spend their efforts as far as like the scale of agriculture? Are you talking about like giant farms, family farms? Where are you?
What's unique about this is every farmer is different, so you really have to be able to speak to what's going to work on that farm. So it can differ from being a young farmer to an older farmer to a large-scale farmer to a smaller farmer, but ultimately you have to do this at scale, and that's part of the reason why we focused on crops that are on our larger acreage in the United States, particularly with our North America programs, because we know we can really scale up solutions that way.
I also understand that it can be very hard to track how much carbon is being sequestered in any individual project. Where are we right now in the science of like understanding how well soil is sequestering carbon and ensuring that when organizations are getting involved or maybe buying an offset, that it truly is sequestered carbon?
We hold ourselves to very high standards at Bayer, and so in addition to following all the current recommendations for modeling, we also take soil sampling on every field that we have a project in to really ensure that we have that high quality of what we're saying that we're generating on the farm. And the science is evolving. Science is always going to evolve, and we're going to get better at this as we go forward. The science is only going to catch up with where the market needs it to be.
Well, Alyssa Cho, thank you so much for joining us in the Livestream Hub.
Thank you.
Every day, all over the world, Prologis helps businesses of all sizes lower their carbon footprint and scale their supply chains. With a portfolio of logistics and real estate and an end-to-end solutions platform addressing the critical initiatives of global logistics today. Learn more at prologis.com.
Welcome back to Livestream Hub. I'm Neitha Rajendran, co-host today, and I'm joined with Shannon Schuyler, Chief Purpose and Inclusion Officer at PwC. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
So, Chief Purpose and Inclusion Officer, what does that mean? What do you do? What is a day in the life? We'd love to hear more about it.
Well, it's really interesting. I think people have really focused on purpose, understanding the why, and it's really important for us as individuals, but even more important for companies to really have an understanding about why they're doing the things that they do that's really rooted in values and behaviors. So my role is to look at purpose in our organization and to make sure that our purpose, to build trust in society and solve important problems, is really how we look at everything that we do. And I oversee everything that's related to being our advocate around purpose, as well as everything in our environmental group, our social group, and our governance group, which I think really helps us to understand that though we do a lot of things, why we do it is truly to bring trust.
Absolutely. And you mentioned trust, and so much of your role is about collaboration cross-departmentally. And in an article you wrote on LinkedIn recently, or I guess last year, you said, there are no more sidelines, and you were referring to C-suite and leadership taking accountability within taking action and diversity and purpose. What did you mean by that, and can you elaborate more?
Well, it's interesting. I think one thing that we've seen, certainly even seen it over the course of the last year, is CEOs and boards and companies are being asked all the time, what is your position on? And so what is your position on whether it's climate, whether it's DE&I, whether it's around reporting, various different social issues? And I just don't think that companies can just decide not to respond. I think you can respond and not agree with something. I think you can respond and say that this is material to our business or it's not. But just to pretend that the things aren't happening, I don't think that your employees, I don't think your customers, I don't think your clients view you as a truly trusted organization if you can't actually decide that I stand for something and that something is actually related to my purpose. So that's what I mean of you can't just hide from it, because somebody on social media, somebody in your employee group is going to find you and is going to question you. And so even by not answering, someone will create a narrative, and I would much rather create my own narrative versus have someone do it for us.
Stand on business. Exactly. And I I want to know what integration and true inclusion looks like in practice for PwC as a service provider. How does that implementation look like for you and the clients that you've worked with?
I think what is really important is that when we're working with clients or even talking to our people, we realize the complex ecosystem that we're working in. And we talk about that word a lot, especially around climate, but really understanding how do we make sure that we're not creating silos. And so when you look at it, it's not about these things as standalone. Issues around society also have issues around climate when you're looking at underserved communities, which also links into social work, which also links into DE&I, both within the four walls of an organization as well as outside of the four walls.
Absolutely.
So really making sure that you're looking at things together, that builds momentum. That really amplifies the things that can be done. And I think that focus is something that really is important. And we're seeing more and more clients really start to bring things together instead of having them apart.
Absolutely. And my final question for you is when you talk about momentum, and that article that I referred to, you wrote about trends that you see for 2023. What are the trends that you see for 2024 around this space?
Oh, it's so interesting that you asked, because I was like, I'm never going to do trends again because I didn't decide that COVID was going to happen and all of these things.
Right.
I think what we're going to see is continued complexity really within business, and we're going to see a real fractured workforce and workplace, and we have to come together to say, how are we going to fix that? How are we going to build trust and really be able to move forward? And I do believe that companies are going to be the ones that continue to be the most trusted, and so we have to really lean into our purpose and our values and make sure that we're doing it right.
Okay, well, great. You heard it here. Purpose, values, and do it correctly. Thank you so much, Shannon. We really appreciate you being here on Livestream Hub.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Sustainability is not a risk to be managed, but an opportunity to thrive. It powers insights, drives growth, and gives your business the ability to take on any future challenge. Let's make an impact together.
At One Tree Planted, we believe a better world starts with one simple act: planting a tree. Our network of global planting partners provides an international portfolio of top-quality tree planting opportunities to our business partners. One Tree Planted coordinates all the logistics with our best-in-class tree planting partners, from sourcing the nursery seedlings to supporting with technical expertise, ensuring that the projects are set to the highest standards. And our list of international corporate partnerships is growing year after year. From rebuilding habitats for endangered species to planting trees in major cities through our urban reforestation program, we look forward to creating a legacy of sustainability with you. And it all starts with just one tree.
Copper demand is set to double globally by 2050. The International Copper Association's members recognise their responsibility to reduce their own emissions. The industry that is helping other sectors decarbonise is now going net zero itself. That's the power of zero. For more information, visit copperpathwaytozero.org.
Welcome, Colette Strauss-Kraus. Colette Kraus from Stoke. Just totally put the two syllables together. Colette, thank you so much for joining us on Livestream Hub. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do at Stoke?
Sure. I'm Colette Kraus. I'm the Director of Carbon Services with Stoke, and Stoke is an integrated sustainability services firm specializing in decarbonizing the built environment.
Amazing, thank you. And some companies are conducting pilot projects to explore the decarbonization that you touched on and the decarbonization approaches before expanding across the portfolio. What's your opinion on this approach? And what's needed to make it successful?
Sure, yeah. We love pilot projects, and we've found through working with our clients that they're really a cost-effective way of learning and exploring new mitigation measures before scaling. We've also found that pilot projects can be a really successful place to educate internal stakeholders and to establish alignment around what might be newer topics in decarbonization for the business. Yeah. In terms of what makes a pilot project successful, I'd say there's three key things that jump out. The first is, while an end goal is really important, pilot projects should be structured around the process rather than that outcome. The key value is going to be learning. The second thing is establishing a pilot project that's flexible and where course correction can happen midstream, as there's more of an iterative approach and a learning feedback loop created. And then the last thing is that as organizations are looking at that pilot project or a series of pilot projects to inform organizational strategy, really thinking about how much of a proxy that pilot project or that selection of pilot projects is for how you can roll it out across a portfolio. An example would be if you've conducted pilot projects in office buildings, it might be difficult to roll that out across multifamily or industrial assets.
Yeah, and I love this idea of thinking about it as a system. And as energy systems continue to decarbonize, more attention is being paid to sources of emissions that are harder to abate. How is this showing up in your work?
So we work with a lot of commercial real estate developers, owners, operators, and we're seeing more and more interest in embodied carbon, a lot more interest in our life cycle assessment services and leveraging those early on in the process to inform design or even to inform decisions around reusing standing assets versus building new. We've also seen it show up in electrification, a lot more clients getting very serious about switching off of natural gas and investing in electrified systems in the building.
Yeah, so very much critical to that net zero transition. And speaking of net zero and in that net zero space, there's more discussion about reporting on performance against targets. How are you working with your clients on this?
Sure, yeah, so measurement, reporting, and verification is certainly gaining momentum alongside the corporate interest in climate targets. The way that this shows up for us in our work is supporting clients in collecting data and establishing those collection systems, as well as processing the data and analyzing it in a way that you can better understand your performance against a target and have the ability to disentangle or to identify what changes are happening due to structural changes in the business, due to changes in operations versus changes in methodology. We want to be really clear and have our clients be clear about changes in data sets being different from intentional investments in efficiency in other decarbonization metrics.
Absolutely. Well, with just a minute left, do you have anything that you would love for people to understand about the work that you do or a key takeaway?
You know, at Stoke, everything we do is really grounded in data, and I'm sure that starts to get a little old hearing how important data is, but it's the case that we find that data is absolutely necessary to informing decision making, but that it's important to not get too hung up on the data itself in terms of going and making decisions with imperfect data. Things will be imperfect, and the idea is that directionally what you should have should send you in the right direction, and then you iterate and build over time.
Thank you, Colette, for being here today at Livestream Hub. We really appreciate your presence and all that Stoke does.
Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Reaching net zero is a coordinated and collaborative global effort of unprecedented scale. It is a journey the world takes together. At Microsoft, we announced 4 bold new commitments in 2020.
Carbon negative by 2030, water positive by 2030, zero waste by 2030, protect ecosystems.
Building on these commitments, we're grounding our work in 3 focus areas.
Our sustainability journey, sustainability technology solutions, global sustainability transformation.
We are advancing the sustainability of our business. And as we learn from our progress, we innovate and share with others. Creating sustainability solutions for operational efficiency and environmental impact while enabling and tracking carbon reduction.
Cornfield.
The climate can't be saved by one country or one company. So we're supporting the societal infrastructure of a sustainable world, making significant investments in research, development, and partnerships to drive climate innovation forward. Net zero is ambitious, but working together, it is achievable.
Learn more at Microsoft.com/sustainability. Microsoft logo.
Welcome back. I'm joined by Matt Hill, founder of One Tree Planted. I was just chatting with Matt behind the scenes saying that it's so cool to be sitting with you because I have seen the logo on so many chip bags, and you mentioned toilet paper, so it's nice to be able to put a face behind the organization that I'm familiar with. So Matt, you founded One Tree Planted almost a decade ago. It has grown tremendously with various partnerships such as Salesforce and Hyundai, and you recently hit a huge milestone, which is, 100 million trees planted? That is crazy. And is this what you imagined the business to look like? How did this idea start?
Never would have thought it'd be this big. I was a marketing professor, 2 young kids. My undergrad was in political science, took a lot of environmental classes, and I knew people wanted to help the environment, but make it simple for people to donate and go to great organizations around the world that often go overlooked, that are doing incredible work. And never would have thought 100 million trees. I thought it'd be like 2 people, 5 people, a couple million trees per year. But here we are today.
How did you scale this business?
Just a great team and relationship building. I didn't know a lot about restoration, so I just wanted to be a sponge and called everybody and anybody who'd listen to me. And I said, one day I'm going to give you guys $1 million. And they're like, yeah, sure. And I would fly out to California, fly out to Indonesia, and I just learned about all the different great work that was going on. And I kept it simple because when people were looking, you just wanted to understand the importance and the impact and how you could make a massive, effect by contributing.
I mean, definitely, we've heard things about reforestation, and obviously we've known that trees are huge anchors and carbon sinks. Other than decarbonization, what benefits does reforestation bring?
Air quality, water quality, job creation, helping with local biodiversity, so much. And those are the ones that I emphasize, a lot more because carbon can be abstract. And really, I thought it was going to be students and just individuals that wanted to make small donations and didn't really understand the complexity, but just wanted to help the planet. So, I say, one tree planted, but together we're planting a forest. And then all of a sudden, you have this massive ripple effect and momentum behind it.
On the note of forests and biodiversity, when you're working with different regions, I'm assuming that you're planting based on the region's native species. Is that how that works?
Exactly. We rely on the partner on the ground. They know what's best. We just come and we're helping them, financially, let's just say, to purchase the trees, help with the putting it in the ground and the monitoring and the maintenance. But we rely on their expertise. They know the community and what's important, what's needed. So I say it's beyond transactional. We want to be there and support in many different ways. And then I tell the donors, whether they're a business or individual, about the impact and inspire them in order to try and do more.
I think the idea of building a network in the regions that you're mentioning and supporting the locals that are already doing the work is so important. So how do you establish that repertoire with the local communities that you work with?
I have the best job ever. I get to travel around the world and meet partners. Just came back from Australia. I was in India, and I meet the partners on the ground. We travel. We understand their needs. And, from yesterday's session, what can we do to help? How can, what else is needed? It's beyond just financially. It's support, visibility, it's training, and taking maybe the best practices that might come from British Columbia to a partner on the ground in a remote region that hasn't been thinking about that way. So it's a lot about relationship building.
Absolutely. And you seem really optimistic about the work that you do, and your title on LinkedIn, rather than co-founder and founder and CEO, is Chief Environmental Optimist. So what are you optimistic about? What brings you the most hope?
There's so much opportunity. It's about collaboration. It's about partnerships. Take synergistic, being cohesive, and getting everybody to just do small little steps. But together, it's a collective action, collective impact. So I'm optimistic because there's so much more we can do.
Definitely. And with about 50 seconds left, I like to ask a fun question. So what's your favorite tree?
Since I'm Canadian, I have to go with the maple tree.
Okay, that's a good one. Since I'm Indian, I have to go with the banyan tree. So wonderful. And is there a key takeaway that you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, everybody can do something. I feel a lot of people have felt paralyzed, and you might not have all the answers right away. But, I always talk about continuous improvement and what worked well, what didn't, what are we going to do better on the next time. I think that's the right approach.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for being here on Livestream Hub. We appreciate One Tree Planted's presence at GreenBiz 24 and the work that you're doing. And it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The future belongs to the bold. Bold leaders, making business more sustainable and resilient now to create long-term value and deliver a competitive edge. Now is the time for bold solutions. Take action with KPMG.
From decarbonization to cutting costs to price stability, whatever your goal, wherever you are in your sustainability journey, we're the right partner to help make your goals a reality. End to end, every step of the way. Walk with us, and let's make it real.
The challenges Palo Alto Networks was facing around sustainability were our ability to have a complete and audit-proof assessment of their greenhouse gas inventory. It wasn't being done. This is where Watershed came in. Watershed's climate platform is the best in the business, without doubt. Everything about their platform is data and science driven. And everything about their relationship is customer driven.
At Southwest Gas, we believe that when we're open to all possibilities, we can build a sustainable energy future. We provide energy to bring comfort to your home, fuel community growth, and support climate goals through innovation. We're imagining energy differently.
Hello, welcome back. My name is Vartan Badalian, Director of Transportation here at GreenBiz, and welcome back to our live stream. Denise, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we have Denise Melville, BMW North America's Director of Sustainability. Who better to talk to than everything on EVs and circularity, right, and EV manufacturing. I really want to hone our conversation down on those kind of fine points. How do you manufacture an EV in a more sustainable way, the circular economy, and all that? So to kick it off to you, I'm curious to hear, because BMW's ethos for moving forward, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, is that the future of automotive is going to be circular. In like 4 to 5 clear steps, can you action out for anyone in the product manufacturing space who's considering or manufacturing products, what does it take to be circular and what should companies be thinking about?
Yeah, well, I would say let's say there are 4 key elements to it. First of all, you have to design circularity in.
Yep.
If you don't start with that, it's going to be very difficult at the end of the process to manage it. So that is absolutely what we do in terms of EVs and combustion engines too. So everything that we do at BMW is not only applied to EV, it's applied across our design range and all of our series. So design it in first. Secondarily, take out pollution and waste out of your manufacturing process. That is something that every organization can do. It's not specific to automotive. But if you look at examples there, every single one of our plants across the world is run on renewable energy. Mm-hmm. BMW has its largest plant here in the US. I don't know whether people know that. We export more vehicles than any other manufacturer in the world from the US. And that is 100% powered by actually methane gas. So take waste out is the second part. The third part is really around collaboration. So we cannot do this alone. So you have to build partnerships with your suppliers, with the downstream recyclers, with other manufacturers that are doing things as well as you are, and collaborate. And I think the fourth thing is really to focus in on where you can put the highest value in the recyclable material. What I mean by that is put it back into the market at its highest value. If you can remanufacture a part, so I'll give you an example. Many of the parts that come off vehicles when they go to be serviced at a BMW dealer come back to us and they get remanufactured as new and put back into the supply chain. A lot of people don't even know that, and it's a cheaper option, so they should think about that and ask about it next time. So yeah, they're the four things really.
It's always impressive because the automotive sector has been almost like the OGs of a circular economy, based around repurposing, selling parts, second life of a vehicle. The used market is the largest market of vehicles, more than the new market of vehicles, right?
Yeah, it's big. Yeah.
So what are you learning? What does it take to build in circularity into a traditionally linear manufacturing process typically?
I think from an automotive manufacturer perspective, you have to think about everybody that is involved in that process. So it starts with the design process, then it moves into, and you're thinking about the raw materials that are going to go into that vehicle. And as an example, again, that lovely i5 you saw Christopher Walken driving in the ad for the Super Bowl this Sunday, that has entirely secondary aluminum within its body. It has carpets that are made from recycled fishing nets. So we are already thinking in the design at every single component of a vehicle. But not to stop there. Then we have to look right at the dealer side of it. What are they doing? How are they recycling? What are they doing to support us bringing back those parts from a used vehicle or an end-of-life vehicle? So we have to think about the entire process from raw material manufacturing right through to our dealer partners. So it's highly complex and very collaborative.
Are you noticing from a dealer perspective consumers having an interest in this new innovative approach to manufacturing vehicles and selling vehicles? Do consumers care about the circular aspect of a vehicle, a BMW vehicle?
To be quite honest, not enough.
Okay.
The customers that understand it, that are coming in to talk to us about EVs, they get it. It's a challenge to actually convert a US customer from their V8 to an EV or to think about what's in the vehicle. Mm-hmm. But actually in a previous role at BMW, I was head of training. And one of the things we put in place was regional product trainers who go out and talk specifically to support our dealers in enabling them to talk about sustainable aspects of the car, the EVs themselves, how they can be charged in a renewable way, and to support the dealers in bringing that to our customers. So that's something that no other manufacturer has on the automotive side, and it's really important to me.
So what are you seeing moving forward for BMW? What are you most excited about? A couple of things that are going to be innovating or adding into your vehicles moving forward, or your supply chain manufacturing process that's circular?
Oh, there are so many. I knew you were coming to this, and it's like, okay, where do I focus? Yeah. I think I'm really excited about the fact that we utilize secondary aluminum within our vehicles. So those of you that have seen the iX, the i5, the i4, they utilize secondary aluminum, which is not only secondary, it's actually created using entirely renewable energy. And we do that in Dubai, and that's used in all of our factories. I would say the use of recycled plastics in our vehicles too. The fact that we're taking fishing nets and ocean plastic and turning that into the carpet that you have in those vehicles. Mm-hmm. The fact that we're working with suppliers not only on the vehicle, but think about the things that come out of the vehicle, the oil, re-refining oil that comes out of that vehicle, and it can be re-refined 8 times and still be the same quality it was originally. So it's all of those aspects. I mean, I'm going to talk later on a panel, but I'm really excited about our tire recycling process that we will put in place.
Tell me more about that.
So our dealers and BMW will recycle every single tire that comes off a BMW. No other manufacturer is doing it. Today, I don't know whether, again, the audience know, but 380 million tires are sold in the US every year. Wow. And around 10 to 20% end in landfill. Can you believe that? I mean, that's well over 30 million tires.
Yeah, clearly avoidable.
Clearly avoidable. It can be done. So we're putting in place a process whereby not one BMW tire, whether it comes off at a dealer or a factory or a used vehicle, will go into landfill in future. And I'm so excited about that. It's going to be such an initiative. And
that's amazing.
It'll be done by the end of the year.
That's amazing to hear. So, I mean, this is my final question for you then. Because you're doing something so innovative right there, what's your call to action to the rest of the automotive industry? What should they be doing around this kind of circular economy push?
I think it's not okay just to put electric vehicles on the streets. It's not okay to do that. Everybody has to look at their ICE, their internal combustion engine vehicles, their EVs, and look at where they, initially, where they're going to recycle, how they're going to remanufacture, and work together on platforms that we can share with our suppliers to work to move forward together. I think collaboration is crucial, but start at the beginning with your raw materials, with the design. That's what I would say, and then work forwards.
Well, thank you so much, Denise. I really appreciate your time and giving all these insightful insights from BMW's perspective. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Angela. Oh, the discuss.
Wells Fargo has donated $50 million in support of indigenous peoples, including funding solar furnaces that convert sunlight
Come into the warm house. Hi, Grandma.
into household heat.
Traditional sun.
Doing gets it done. Wells Fargo, the bank of doing.
America knows that a sustainable future is only possible if we make real progress now. At Constellation, we've already begun. We are the nation's #1 producer of clean, carbon-free energy, generating nearly 90% carbon-free power today. And we're committed to producing 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. Together, we're creating a brighter tomorrow today. Power on, America.
I am joined here by Emily Pierce from Persephone and by Brian Finch from MasterCard. Welcome to the Livestream Hub.
Thank you.
So I am excited for this conversation about climate disclosures because it feels like it's such this incoming and ever-changing environment, and I'd love to demystify it a little bit. So Emily, I want to start with you. How do you understand the different buckets of regulatory requirements out there?
Well, I think in terms of the buckets related to corporate reporting, it's important to make that distinction because there's a lot of other policy drivers of climate reporting. But right now we're really looking at 4 buckets, and I would start with Europe, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive that is in force. Many companies around the world are preparing this year to report next year, and even more are going to be preparing this year to gather data next year and report the next year. And that is focused on not just climate risk and climate disclosure, but on broader sustainability disclosure across many environmental, social, and governance topics. And not only your financial material risk and opportunities related to sustainability, but also your impacts on the planet and people. So then we move to the second bucket, and I'm just going to go to the hyperlocal, which is California. You can argue about whether or not that's hyperlocal, but California has moved forward with climate reporting obligations as well. 2 half buckets there, one on carbon reporting. That's SB 253, requiring companies over a certain threshold, a million, in revenue to report their Scope 1, Scope 2, and 3 emissions. And then you have SB 261, which requires companies with 500 million in revenue and above to report on their climate financial risk. And that reporting is based on the principles and recommendations of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So now we'll zoom out to the national level. We're all waiting at the edge of our seats for the SEC's finalization of its proposed climate disclosure rule. And there I like to remind folks that it's actually the case that public companies in the U.S. have had obligations to disclose their risks related to climate change since the beginning of time for the SEC, really with core disclosures about, telling the market about what your core risks are. But in 2010, the SEC did issue guidance specific to that issue of climate change. So the SEC's proposal was about enhancing and standardizing the way companies made disclosures about climate risk to the market to make that information more consistent and comparable for investors. And so we're waiting to see what that will look like in its final form. The real question is, what are the details going to be? How specific is it going to be? But again, it will emphasize that companies need to focus on good disclosure about these risks in a way that is decision useful for investors. And then we zoom out to the rest of the world. And there it's really important to focus on the positives, which is that there's been a lot of work in the public space to drive convergence around sustainability disclosures. And as you look at the regulatory regimes rolling out across the globe, I think 2024 will be a big year for that. Most of them are inspired by the International Sustainability Standards Board. And in fact, not just inspired, they're directly looking to those standards and to incorporate them into their regulation. And that's a huge win for companies who operate across borders, for investors who invest across borders, and for businesses who engage with companies across borders, because it sets a common baseline for that core financially material information related to sustainability topics for companies to share. And again, one more detailed standard on climate, so climate is the first focus, but also incorporating a framework for thinking about broader sustainability risks and opportunities, and an agenda moving forward to develop more specific standards on other topics.
Got it. So we have Europe, which is currently enacted. We have California, which I believe that's going to take effect in 2026 is the first year that companies need
For
to start?
reporting. Yes.
For reporting. Then we have SEC, and we're on the edge of our seat finding out what's going to happen with that, and then the rest of the world.
Yes.
Okay, that's a lot of cross currents. Brian, I know you're a U.S.-based organization, but you operate globally. How are you finding the European environment, making this more complex for you?
Yeah, so MasterCard technology company in the payment space with a global reach, operations in almost 100 countries. A lot of complexity, a lot of uncertainty around this space. There's intense effort right now and energy expense going into readying for these disclosures. Preparing really for the first time, you see industry trying to bring their sustainability disclosures up to the level of financial disclosures. That was a process that in the US evolved over decades, and we're talking just a matter of a few years where that same maturation has to happen here. So there's intense pressure on a lot of companies, including ours, to get ready very quickly. Yeah, that said, this is a great moment for sustainability transformation inside of companies, and we can be using this moment as a forcing function to drive the change that's really needed. And so I'm very excited for what is a lot of work, a lot of expense ahead, because it's doing what it's needed to do at the end of the day. This reporting is going to be driving change.
I love that perspective. It's yes, it's a lot of work, but it's the type of thing we actually need in order to make the change we need. So I'm glad you're excited about this. Emily, it also sounds like we have a lot of different threads going on. I could see this being onerous for organizations. They're needing to do these different types of reporting. What opportunities are there to align across these different buckets to make more efficiencies?
So I think the good news is that a lot of that opportunity has already been capitalized on. All four of the regulations and standards that I discussed really inspired by the framework that was built by the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So again, across all the regulations, climate disclosure is a common thread, but the underpinnings of climate disclosure and ultimately the other sustainability topics is really those four pillars of governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. So just as Brian was saying, we're really driving companies through regulation to think about their governance first. What processes do you have in place to identify your risks and opportunities? What is your business's strategy to respond to those sustainability risks and opportunities? How are you managing those risks? And then within those topics, what are the metrics and targets that you need to measure to track your performance? And how do you communicate those risks and opportunities and how you're managing those to your investors? Or in the case of Europe and California, other audiences. So that common thread of those four pillars is key. And within that metrics and targets pillar, we talked about climate as being the common topic. Carbon is the common metric. I like to talk about the carbon data as the cornerstone, because you need to understand your carbon data to develop your transition plan, to develop your targets, to make the disclosures about your progress towards your targets, to understand what you want to do to adapt and mitigate to climate change. So I think if a company focuses on those four pillars first, including that core data point of carbon metrics, you then have a strong foundation to build on your other reporting under your CSRD obligations, for your impacts and other controls around that reporting. And so the good news is that's the common thread. I will say that there's room, there is opportunity that can still be pursued to further that convergence. Some of the reporting obligations are not as direct about building specifically on those pillars, or, for example, allowing a company to build that foundation and use that same foundation for different reports. So I think there's still opportunity that we can pursue as a market in the interest of efficiency for both reporters, investors, also assurance providers, more broadly for the market. But again, I think the good news is we're really close to the finish line on that, and there's opportunity for more efficiency, but we're in a good place.
I love this excitement around all these opportunities.
Yeah.
So I want to put a finer point on this. Brian, can you help illuminate what your strategy has been to be navigating these new expectations?
Yeah, so we've all seen this coming. And so MasterCard began this journey preparing about 2 years ago now. And it really is about putting that foundation in place that Emily was alluding to. We made a decision that I think was critical 2 years ago to, one, establish an ESG controller inside our company. So this office is a key partner to our sustainability team in helping prepare us and prepare the rest of the company for the level of controls and processes and disclosures that meet the bar that financial reporting has required for some time now. It's also about ensuring that we have that governance and those systems in place that are going to allow us to adjust and evolve in the same way that the reporting landscape is going to continue to evolve. We know what's coming with CSRD, we know what's coming with California, with ISSP to a degree, but we don't know what else is going to be coming, and I'm sure there will be more around the corner. So it's really about having that foundation that will allow you to adjust and pivot and build on. I think that starts with reporting, with the governance, and it starts with the reporting systems and processes that can be built off of.
Well, Emily Pierce, Brian Finch, thank you so much for joining us and helping to demystify this new regulatory environment.
Thank you.
Corporate Sustainability Manager here at GreenBiz, and I'm joined with Wawa Gatheru. That is not the correct pronunciation. Please correct me.
Gatheru.
Gatheru. Okay. Wawa Gatheru and Deja Odom today, and this is our last segment on Livestream Hub. I'm a little bit sad, but I'm happy that we saved the best for last, in my opinion. So Wawa, Deja, could you both introduce yourselves and just tell our audience a little bit more about what you do and what brought you here?
Okay, sure. Hi, I'm Deja. I recently graduated from the Bren School of Environmental Science last June and got my master's degree, and I will be an incoming fellow. I'm not sure if I can say where yet, but in DC for its ESG company. And I am a GreenBiz 24 emerging leader. So this is my first conference and my first GreenBiz, and I'm very excited to be here.
So we're so excited to have you.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Wawa Gatheru. I am a Gen Z climate activist and the proud founder and executive director of the national nonprofit Black Girl Environmentalist. We are working to empower the next generation of climate leaders of color, particularly Black women and Black gender expansive folks, with a focus on early career individuals that have 0 to 10 years of experience. Deja is one of the incredible members of BGE, and we are really a community. We're a climate squad of different folks that are really invested in Loving a Better World into existence, and it is also my first GreenBiz.
Yay!
So excited to be here. Phoenix is such a special city, and I wish I was here longer.
Yeah. I'm so glad both of you are able to join for GreenBiz, and you both bring such interesting perspectives, even though you're in the same organization and working to advance some of the same efforts. Deja, you're a recent, like you mentioned, EDF Climate Corps graduate. Is that the word for it?
So like a master's grad, but an EDF Climate Corps fellow.
Fellow, okay, that is how it is. And then, of course, Wawa, you're this powerhouse doing this amazing work with your nonprofit. And for those of you who don't know about the Emerging Leaders Program that Deja is a part of, it is GreenBiz's program that advances BIPOC young professionals in the sustainability space. And I was a former emerging leader, fun fact. So it's really great to have both of you here and talking about this subject, and particularly talking about what it means to be Gen Z in the climate space. This is a topic that's close to my heart, as I am a young professional in this space, and have found barriers of entry, which I'm sure we all can relate to, where we have a lot of fresh perspective. Our generation feels a lot of eco anxiety, a lot of responsibility to fix most of the problems that were left to us to address, but are oftentimes not taken as seriously in this space because we're young and we don't have that corporate experience, we don't have that those years under our belt. So how have you guys navigated that, and what are you working to advance in this space? Yeah. It's a loaded question.
Yeah. You gonna go first?
I think I have a very untraditional path because I work full-time with Black Girl Environmentalist, and I guess my first full-time job is running a team of full-time and part-time staff. So even myself, I haven't necessarily had the experience in the corporate ESG space or the traditional climate and environmental nonprofit space. I have as like an intern or a fellow, but even in my limited time there have been things that I have noticed which led me to take more of an action-oriented approach to creating an organization that's working to address a lot of these inequities that exist, particularly around pathway and retention for Black women and Black gender expansive folks. So we know that people of color make up nearly 40% of the U.S. population, but we don't exceed a 12 to 16% green ceiling in the climate sector. And that statistic is probably lower because that is a Green Report 2.0 that is voluntarily something that people opt to take. So there are tons of folks that actually don't fill out that survey and that assessment. So particularly with Gen Z, you're completely right. Like, we are uniquely interested in this space, primarily because we are the first generation that truly grew up with climate being the backdrop of our lives. I first heard the term global warming when I was 5 years old. I was watching An Inconvenient Truth and terrified.
Stressed out.
A lot of us really see this work as not just being a means to an end in regards to our livelihoods, but as a requirement for us to really be able to have a future and to potentially bring children into the world if that's what we choose to do, and just bringing up the next generation. So with Gen Z, I think that what we're asking for in regards to older generations is to be taken seriously, is for our expertise to be really valued, because the reality is that we have a lot of unique qualities about us as young people. For example, we know how to navigate the digital terrain. For better or worse, we grew up with these technologies. We know how to communicate with people in new and different ways, and we do that very, very well. We're also addressing these issues differently because we are saddled with them. The policies and practices that we put in place now are going to impact our futures. Many of the leaders in the leading organizations will not be living out the policies that they do put forth or do not put forth. So I think that generational perspective is so critical, it's so important, and it's something that has to be valued.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Deja, what's your take on it?
Wow, you said a lot. That was like amazing that I'm trying to kind of go off of. And I think the last thing with like digital navigation. Yeah. So even though you feel like you took a like more unconventional route of coming out of school and then like going straight into BGE, for me, I've always been like, well, I haven't actually had my first big girl job. But my way into sustainability was honestly just I don't know, by accident and by undergrad, like working at my Office of Sustainability, and then by talking to people and learning like the disconnect that some like older generations and Gen Z, some people, because not everybody really understands this field, even though we are growing up in it and it is affecting all of us. Not everybody feels connected to it and feels that it's like an issue that they know how to solve. And so like that's how I found my love, is like through sustainability communication and talking to other people. And how Wawa said, like I'm also into digital, networking and digital communications, and would like to, start a sustainability account and like an Instagram and a TikTok, and talk to people that look like me and people that don't look like me, and kind of explain to them about sustainability and introduce them to that topic, and kind of bridge the gap essentially in ways that they think might not exist.
That is such a good point. Like, I feel like TikTok, social media, being able to communicate through these different mediums is such a superpower of our generation. I mean, Wawa, you, speaking of campaigns and communication, I mean, you've been featured in Essence Magazine, Vogue, Teen Vogue, Glamour. You were recently in a photo shoot with Billie Eilish. I mean, that is a huge way to bring amplification to the issue of environmentalism and sustainability and Gen Z's role in that. What advice do you both have for companies looking to engage with Gen Z? While on stage, you mentioned climate quitting and how the importance of having a strong foundation in values is a key thing that our generation looks for when looking for an employer. And Deja, I know you've echoed some similar sentiments. I mean, what advice do you both have for companies looking to hire and really develop the workforce of Gen Z?
Yeah, so actually, like we just talked about this at our table, and I think one great way people can do it is through LinkedIn. It's like I was saying how we, as Gen Z, spend a lot of time networking and putting ourselves out there and being like, this is my story, coming up with our elevator pitches. And we put our taglines on things and we're like, hire me essentially, right? I want to work for you. And I think that it could be reciprocated, just kind of, there's so many people that I've found just by searching and stumbled across them, and I'm like, can I please talk to you? Can we just have a conversation? And I think the same thing could kind of happen back. It doesn't always have to be a recruiter per se, like a hiring manager, anybody could kind of just come back and access the same question and reach out.
Yeah. I'd say there's a new avenue, I think, for businesses to really put their money where their mouth is in regards to ESG investing. So climate philanthropy, I don't think I had an opportunity to talk about this on stage, but with climate philanthropy, we see that there are gaps in who gets funding and where the money is being sourced. Climate's the least funded issue item out there, and even within the climate giving space, organizations that are led by people of color receive 1.3% of funding. Youth-led organizations receive 0.76% of funding. Black-led nonprofits, 75% of us have a general operating budget of less than $500,000, with more than half of them operating at an annual budget of less than $30,000. So there's a lot of disparities, and for young people, when we're looking at businesses and thinking about where we want to put our dollar or where we want to work, we want to see organizations that are being very intentional with where their investing is going and how they're contributing to philanthropy. So be more intentional with who's receiving money when you're engaging in that space, and really make sure that you are uplifting frontline communities and organizations that are led by communities that are creating solutions as a means of survival and really need the capital to be able to scale the work that is so important for the future that we're all collectively going to be a part of.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned a really good point of like, as a corporation, rather than starting something from the ground up in your own foundation, support the foundations that already exist. Support the foundations that are doing the good work that so many of us already align with, and amplify that. So I really appreciate that perspective, and I wish we had another 10-minute segment to do, but thank you so much, Wawa and Deja, for being here and being so involved and participating so well with the GreenBiz community. This is the face of Gen Z, and I'm so proud to be a part of it. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for our viewers back at home, I love to say thank you for tuning in to Livestream Hub. This is GreenBiz 24 in Arizona. We're featuring some amazing speakers, and we featured some amazing speakers, and we have breakout sessions continuing, and we're just so thankful that all of you have tuned in. I'm Nathan Rajendran, and I want to give a special shout out to my host, Sarah Golden, and this has been Livestream Hub.